All right, hello. How's it going there, Alistair? How's it going there, Zizo? How are you guys? Thanks for the challenge, Alistair. That was fun. Congratulations, Citrus, on winning Alistair's challenge. That was a lot of fun. Did the wrecker. Got another good build now I can use, so that's always nice to have. All right, so doing a little testing here to start with. I'm just gonna crank this. So I made some of this video, and I gotta play with it some to get the video to be a little bit more coherent. But a bunch of players are having issues. I see this almost on a daily basis. Let me see if I can find some of them. Let's quickly first actually go over the update. I gotta find the link to the update. Where is it? Right here. All right, let's go over this update first. Let's mute out the engine noise in the game there real quick. All right, so go watch the update video too. Like, share all that bullshit. But I'll read it again here. So we're getting pots and more line updates. So this is going to be good. This is what I was hoping for in fishing. I think this is going to add the most engineering to the game. As you can see in this picture here, I think, I forget who had this, but it's in the video. You know, the thing with pot fishing, we're going to get lobster and crab pots. They're probably the same pot, just catch lobster and crab. Maybe they're different. But the benefit with this is that, for example, you know, you need cranes, you need to balance your ship. There's a lot of engineering that goes into that. You know, you benefit from having a ship that is larger or smaller because you're using pots. I think it was the right idea of them to actually, you know, we don't have the details yet of pictures. Generally, we get that a week before, so we don't have that yet. But generally speaking, we'll get that a week before we get more information. And so having, I think, innate, like, actual pots that are designed correctly is going to be good. So that's, I'm really looking forward to that. That was the fishing that I most wanted. You know, I'm not all that interested in net fishing. That's why I don't use it that much. Pots are where I think pots are really good for multiplayer as well. Like, you know, with line fishing, like we did a couple multiplayer streams with the nets. There's not that much work to do. You're out there dragging a net, you bring it in. You know, your workers are kind of sitting around doing nothing until you bring the nets up, and then they have some work to do. Doing pots is a lot more labor intensive to, you know, I don't know if we're gonna have to bait the pots. That would be kind of cool, but to put the pots out, to bring them in, to store them on deck, stuff like that, I think is gonna be really interesting. So third and final fishing major update is just a few weeks away. It's on the 14th of August. Pot and line fishing major update introduces lobster and crab pots and advanced line fishing. New fishing pot components. So again, right here it says new fishing pot components. Some people are like, oh, just use hoppers. I think they've done a really good job of, like, the art is good where, you know, the fishing lines were interesting. Like, they could have, you know, that would be like somebody saying, oh, just use a pipe for a fishing line that you hold in your hands, right? Of course, it's better to have an actual art asset, and they can do a lot more things. They can do rabbit holes where you have a pot that, for example, you have a pot, it attracts the crab and the lobsters. You can make it so, for example, it may just attract crab and lobsters, so you don't get fish in there, if that's what they want to do. And then when the fish, say, or the crab or the lobsters touch the pot, one thing some games will do is it will delete the asset, the moving fish, and then it will install the new static asset into the pot. I don't know if that's what they're going to do, but theoretically that's something they could do. So I think it was a better idea to make new fishing components. New parts are always a crowd pleaser. We've been over the Steam DB before where we get updates. I'll bring it up now. Every time we get an update, it's, you see it every once in a while, kind of, I think people have the wrong idea is when they talk about how, we don't want new parts, we just want you to fix bugs. That's not bore out by the data at all. You can see that every time we get major updates and DLCs, it's the largest spikes in player base. And they need that. They need these spikes in the player base to get people interested who may have petered off to come back in and enjoy the game. So it's important to get new parts and components, and it has to be balanced in with fixes. You can't just do fixes. You don't get new players. You don't get people coming back. You get a small number compared, and it's all in the graph there. So that looks very interesting. Let me see. So you deploy them on the seafloor, which makes sense, and we'll catch crab and lobsters over time. I think by having new components, for example, I'm interested how they'll do the buoys. We do have some floating items. The problem is, I talked about this when I did my video that I sent to the devs for what I thought they should do with fishing pots, or crab pots. When you do it, new components, for example, you can make a new buoy that acts with this. You can make a new type of line, theoretically. If we use the current parts we have, you get into a big problem where, for example, if you used a hopper and then you use a regular rope that we already have or a cable, and then you use a winch, it starts getting expensive and heavy. You need a really huge float in order to float that much rope because the rope is artificially heavy. And so by doing new components, for example, we could get a really thin, light, almost like fishing line that goes from a buoy down to the crab pot. You can automatically have that line change depth instead of I want to drop a crab pot 500 meters down. Well, I have to use a huge winch. And so the huge winch has to be on the hopper. And it's like stuff like that would ruin it. And then because you have so much rope out, the buoy's not going to be able to hold the rope above the water. And so you run into all these problems where by having a new component, you can have a fishing pot or a crab pot or a lobster pot that theoretically I would love to see. I talked about this in my video, multiple sizes where, for example, a lot of lobster pots can be moved by hand, and they are. They're moved by hand by the people doing it. And then you'll get like king crab pots, which are like 800 pounds a piece and need to be moved by a crane. So that allows you to have a small boat, theoretically, with hand-moved pots, and then larger. This also allows you, if you're going to play a career game, you need some stuff where it doesn't cost that much money. So if you have $20,000 in your bank account there in career, you can go out and do handheld pots. And you just need a little boat. You hand load them on. You hand throw them over. And then, something that sounds simple like the buoy, by adding new components, theoretically, you can, if you're in 10 meters of water, you hook the buoy to the pot, or it's automatically hooked. You throw it over, and now it has 10 meters of rope, and the buoy, bounces on the surface. You then go out to 500 meters. You throw the pot over, and the buoy is the same, and the line's negligible in weight. And you'll have to have all these problems. So I think it was the right idea to do new components. Advanced rod and line fishing. New rod fishing mechanics allows you to set the float length in order to bait deeper or shallower. So this will be cool for going after different depths of fish. This could also be cool for example, I think a lot of people miss the idea that this was an iterative process with the fishing major updates. We got line fishing first. It was pretty basic. They then came back with nets. With nets, we started to get, you can buy fishing data. The fish have hot spots. They changed. The fish used to spawn everywhere. Now they spawn differently. I think these are all beneficial things. I think some people were quick to cry and complain, not understanding that this was not a finished process. I think now that this is coming to a finished process, this is the time for suggestions of balancing and some changes. Once it's kind of completed. For example, I have not even tested. I know Tripper was talking about this. Hello, Tripper. Issues with the nets and the nets not behaving correctly. If it would not surprise me if the devs made, people are like, oh, devs dumb. Devs made changes. Why make changes? Nets work fine. well, you're starting to see that they are changing some of the fishing mechanics for the final major update. And it's unsurprising that some of the mechanics were going to change as they were changing mechanics for the final update. So we'll see how it all works out. But it would not surprise me if some of these changes were in preparation for this major update. So let's see what the major update comes out, and then that would be the time to offer constructive feedback in the correct places, of course. Because again, like it's like a lot of these things. People complained about animals coming in, earlier. Well, they were done as an art asset, and then we get the ability to transport them. These are the things that it's like some of these things are changed in anticipation for other mechanics. All right, so fish will now fight back and will attempt to run while hooked. Reeling too much while the line is under tension can break the line and allow the fish to escape. So a little bit more interactive fishing, I would say now, so that you actually have to kind of be careful. You don't want to reel too much while the line's under tension. Wait till they're coming toward you to reel. Gives it a little bit more of an interactive feel with fishing. So I think it'll be less monotonous where it's throw, line out, wait, hook, pull in, throw, line out, wait, hook, pull in. There's a little bit of skill in there, and we'll see how that is. Let's see. As well as these feature some related fixes and improvements. So this is the final planned fishing major update. With many of the player suggestions now implemented. Join us next week for a minor update. So very interested to see what the minor update is going to be. Every minor update, we've had fixes. So would not surprise me. We're going to get some fixes next week likely, and then the new major update after that. So it would not surprise me if we see some more information. Generally, it's a week before. If you look at the screenshots here, generally what happens is a week before the major, the devs will put out some of their own screenshots showing the parts for the major update. That way people can have kind of like a week's head start to see if they can it's kind of cool to like try to divine from the pictures what the update's going to be about. We used to do this with Grand Theft Auto back in the day. Like they used to have cool websites that it was like little hints of what the game's going to be years in advance. And so it's kind of cool to be able to go in and start like working on your boats to make them ready for the update. I think that's kind of cool. We'll go in the sewer here of the discussions and see what that looks like. But some cool screenshots there. This one's York's. That was a cool one. Heinrich, and I forget who this was. It's all in the video, so you can watch the video. But let's go into discussions. 1 fish is great, 2 fish is good, 3 is a bit much. Wah. Yay, more fishing. Looking forward, that's me. I don't need to read my own. This one's just spam that somebody puts out every week. Good one from Alistair there. Wah, wah, cry, cry, cry. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. There we go. Somebody telling people to shut the fuck up. I like that. Again, just because something is not for you does not... Again, the game is not made for Void. Void, I doubt, has the money to finance a game all for Void. Just, like, for example, if the devs went and made multiplayer, improved multiplayer again, great. I don't play on public multiplayer, but again, it does not pick my pocket that they do something for other people. That's a very selfish mindset. Yep. God, people complain here literally about everything. Whenever they release a patch with bug fixes, people moan, we need more content, and whenever there's content up, you hear we don't. Good. I'm glad people call these people out on their nonsense. I think it's important to do that. You get this thing where the people who feel like they've been wronged are often the loudest voice, and that does not mean that is the flavor of the community. And so I'm glad that some people will go out, like Alistair has, myself, Citrus does it, go out and, like, when they give us something that you like, make sure you give them a pat on the back. You can't just give somebody the stick every time they do something wrong. You need to give them their carrot when they do something right as well. Then don't play it. They're avarice. So that's the sort of thing that, that's why I talk about that. So, all right, so that was good. That's the weekly update. So very good with that. I'm fishing pots was my #1 desire, so I'm happy with that. Let's catch up with chat. Hey, Citrus. Hello. The winner of Alistair Challenge. Hello, Variante. How are you? All right. Quickly check. What's this? No. For some reason, I'm getting pings now for comments on the weekly update. All right, so kind of talking about this, I'm going to make a video on this. I already kind of recorded one. I got to do some fixes, but I've been seeing a ton of people who still don't understand fundamental parts of pressurization in general. Luckily, I'm trying to make these videos so that I can easily just like post the video and that person can watch the video and fix their own stuff. I've been helping people fix a bunch of builds lately, and generally speaking, lately, this is what I've been seeing is people go, my boat, my plane, my car, whatever, it goes for, they generally either do kilometers or they do for time. They'll say it goes 2 kilometers, then the engine dies. It goes for 3 minutes, then the engine dies. It goes for 10 minutes, then the engine dies. That's generally a couple things. This is how an engine should be ventilated. Makes sense, right? You're sucking, you're sucking fuel out of the tank. There's a pump already in the engine. It sucks fuel out of the tank. You need to replace that with gas. You need to replace it with something. And the easy thing is gas, right? You'll see on airplanes, I've talked about this before, airplanes have fuel vents. Fuel comes out, air goes in. You push fuel in with the, when you pump fuel back in the tanks, it pushes the air out. Very simple process. This is in your car. Every time you fill up your car, you push the air out of the tank. It goes out of the fuel vent. When the fuel is drawn into your either carburetor or fuel injectors, injection system, it replaces that fuel with air. You have to do that. You see this on a daily basis in your house, too. I was going to even do a video where I just showed household things that this happens. For example, when you do the liquid soap. Hello, David. Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. When you do the liquid soap in the bathroom, you push down the handle. It squirts soap into your hand. When you let go of that, you'll notice. You can even watch it. That's why I was going to do a video of it. An air bubble will go back up the nozzle and into the container. If it didn't do that, you would just eventually crush the container, and the air pressure pushing in the nozzle would equal the pressure caused by you pushing down the plunger, and no soap would come out. You need to replace the soap with air, or else it doesn't come out. You can do this with water. You take a bottle of water, you turn it upside down, it goes glug, glug, glug. That's what's happening when it glugs. The water will come out as much as can come out that overcomes the air pressure. But then the water stops because the air pressure is pushing on the water to keep it from coming out. That air then goes into the bottle. It replaces the water that was lost in the first glug, and then it glugs again because you're replacing the water with the air. That's why it's glug, glug, glugging. You can then take the same bottle of water, tip it upside down, and put a hole in the bottom of it, and it will not glug. The air will be it won't be sucked. I don't like this whole notion of suction. It will be pushed in from outside. It will go from the area of high pressure to low pressure. The water will come streaming out of the bottom. You'll get real easy flow. This happens in everything. You see this all the time where, for example, if you're gonna, you don't do it much, but everything's like pull tabs now. But back in the day, you used to get a can of pineapple juice. You would put a hole in one side of the can of pineapple juice, and you put a hole in the other side of the can of pineapple juice, and the pineapple juice would pour right out. If you didn't do that, it would glug and end up all over the counter. This is very, very simple stuff. And a lot of people, don't understand that. That's fine. But it's pretty basic, and this is what most of people's problems are. So, again, very simple. This is what you want to be doing. Ventilating your tanks. This system's been running now for 1,000 seconds. This one over here is a little bit different. This one doesn't illustrate it as well as it should. I should be using large pumps. But anyways, there is no place for the air to be replaced in here. It's sucking the fuel out. A lot of people are doing this. I don't know why they're doing this. Even on small builds, they're pumping fuel in a tank. I think they need it. You don't. The prefabs and the modulars will pump their own fuel. You do not need to pump it in. Now, some people say, oh, well, but in my ship, the fuel has to go a very long distance, and therefore I need to pump it. Great. Pump it into a relief tank first, like you would in real life. Generally, they'll pump them into a feeder tank. So you have tanks, they pump into a central feeding tank. That feeding tank can be ventilated. Your other tank should be ventilated anyway. And then let the engine pump its own fuel in. Stop putting a fuel pump right on the engine. This one doesn't work all that well because there's enough space in the pipe. This pump here only goes to about 11 atmospheres. But what will eventually happen is when you're pumping in like this, I see this on a lot of people's builds, you're pumping air into the pipe, and it then sits right here. Now, with the small pump, you won't get up to 60 atmospheres, but with the large pumps, you will. And so what's going to happen is you're pumping air right into this elbow. And so you get 60 atmospheres of air sitting right here. And the fuel, again, 60 atmospheres is a hard limit. So at 60 atmospheres, the game doesn't care if you're trying to pump air or liquid. It will not let it go by. And so what happens is you airlock. You push a bunch of air into the elbow. It then cannot go anywhere because the pumps are one way. And now the fuel hits a 60 atmosphere wall and can't go anywhere. And you starve your engine of fuel because you're not letting the air through. So that's what's happening. Something simple like this will fix this problem. Again, this is not a good example because these pumps here cannot get up to 60 atmospheres. But essentially, do something simple like this where the liquid comes up, it goes around, the air is also going with it, so it's pumping, in this case, diesel and air. It goes through here, the air escapes, the diesel goes through the engine, and that will kill your problems. You know, no problem there. All right, so I need better examples on this just because some of these aren't working because of the way I've set them up. But the other one I see a lot of is, so this is another example here. Let's see if this one's still running. Nope, this one stopped running. So this is a good example here. If we look at our starter, if I can find it. All right. Which one's clicking? I can hear one clicking. This one's clicking here, I bet. All right. So this here is your classic exhaust clog. This happens. This is the other one. So the first one is people not ventilating their tanks. The second one, which I actually think is more common now, is people are not putting their catalytic converters on the correct way. This catalytic converter here is upside down. There is an in and there is an out. It says exhaust in and it says exhaust out. The exhaust comes from the engine. It goes out here. It needs to then go on the inside of the converter, and then it goes out on the outside of the catalytic converter, and then it goes out the exhaust pipe. So what's happening here is very simple. Let's look at it. Oh my God, 60 atmospheres, as though that's some sort of magic number. It is. The game is coded that at 60 atmospheres, you cannot put any more gas, let's say fluid. You can't put any more fluid through, which is gas or liquid. And so what happens is the exhaust comes out, it gets in here, it builds up to 60 atmosphere, and then it stops. No more exhaust can come through. As you can hear, the engine is dead. All right, and so I don't know how much time it took. It's going to still count because it's based on temperature. But you can hear the starter going. The starter is going because the catalytic converter is on backwards. That is most often what is happening. So this one here, the engine is still running. It should be. As you can see, the starter is false. The engine's still running fine, no problems. And that's because I installed the catalytic converter on there the correct direction. That would be like the #1 thing I'm seeing people doing incorrectly now. So eventually I'll get this video going. Did I not electrify these? Fuck. All right, so this is just an example here. Catalytic converter on the correct direction, catalytic converter on the incorrect direction. So if you have this problem, go in, look at your catalytic converter, make sure it's facing the correct direction, and that's why it's happening. So a lot of these problems, again, are perfectly logical. You are blocking the flow of the fluid by hitting 60 atmospheres. Once it hits 60 atmospheres, you cannot push any more through. So if you block it with 60 atmospheres of gas, and you're trying to put fuel through there, the fuel cannot get through this wall of gas. All right. If you're doing exhaust and you hit a 60 atmosphere wall, you cannot put any more exhaust in there. The engine cannot run without getting rid of its exhaust. It stops running. So pretty basic stuff. I'll get this this example tuned up here. Let's fix this real quick. Okay, let's fix it. I don't think I saved this after I hooked these up. I thought these were all hooked up. Let's save this real quick. So I'll make a video on this. You know, I do this to try to make it easier for me because normally I have to take their build from the workshop, boot up the game, go in there, check it. Yup, it's one of these. And then I can just put the video in there if I don't have the time and still help people out. All right, so these are just two real quick examples. The large fuel pumps can go up to 60. There's pumping air through. What is going on here? I can't see anything. Fuck me. I didn't hook up the toggles. I had already hooked all these up, and then I forgot to save it, so that's why I'm behind on these. Let's do that real quick. Alright, so let's go ahead and we'll start these up. So the prediction, pretty simple. The green one, the catalytic converter is facing the correct direction. It will go through. So you have air coming in at 599 liters per second. It's going through there at 599 liters per second. It's going through here at 599 liters per second. It's going out there at 599 liters per second. And we build up a maximum pressure of 8.2. All right. Over here we have the, it's going in at 599. It's going here at 599. Oh my God, look, it's already done. 60 atmospheres. We've hit 60 atmospheres. We're at 60 atmospheres, and no exhaust is coming out. So that's exactly what's happening when you put your catalytic converter backwards. It is building up the pressure to 60 and no more flow. So pretty simple there. That's the issues that's going on. All right, let me go ahead and catch up with chat here. Why do jet engines lose RPS when the fuel gets below 2,000 liters? No clue. I've never had that problem, so I don't know. I've never had that problem, so I don't know what. Test something real quick. Let's see how old this is too. This is my Stormworks Basics jet turbine tutorial from what is that? June 9th, 2022. So a little over 2 years old. Let's see, is that the correct tutorial? It is. This is at 100%, which should be something like 652 liters, something like that. 666 liters. So that's below 2,000 liters and fine. See what it's doing. It's spooling down. We'll see what it's doing here. I'll run a couple of my jets and see what's up. You know, again, something like that, Zizo, it's like, is that actually what's causing the problem? You know, this one here, if you look, we are going to be drawing a vacuum at some point. Now, a bunch of people have criticized the devs for, why did you pressurize liquids? That's not realistic. I get it. They did it to help people out. Again, they had changed the mechanics. So watch what's happening here. This is a good example of what's going on. Once we pull a partial vacuum, the engine will get fuel starved. This happens in real life. I just talked about this. This is why we put air in. This is from 2022 when we didn't have to ventilate tanks. So likely what's going to happen here is once we get below 1 atmosphere, we're going to start to pull a partial vacuum, and we will likely get fuel starvation just as we would in real life. I can find, let's see if I can find them on the 145. But see, we're below 1 atmosphere on pressure. The devs cranked the pressure in the tank up to 22. They've been criticized ad nauseum for this. Like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. That's stupid. The devs are stupid. No, that's not the case. The case is you get an 8-year-old kid who's trying to play the game, who spawns something from the workshop, pisses around for 5 minutes, and then puts it back in the workshop. That kid can now play because the fuel is so pressurized that it takes a while for him to pull a partial vacuum, that he has no clue what that means. And so I think that's why the devs did it. By pre-pressurizing the fuel, it gives you some run time so until you have a problem. It's a buffer. And I think that's why they did it. You notice we're at pulling a partial vacuum here. Now, as we do this, it's harder and harder and harder for the engine to pump the fuel. All right? It makes it more difficult. So likely at some point we will reach fuel starvation and the engine will die because we're pulling a partial vacuum. All right, so try ventilating your tanks. That's one thing you can do. Do tests with that as well. But you can see we're still running fine here. We're making 253 S-watts. We're at 520 liters. We are pulling a partial vacuum. So check the pressure in your tanks. See if you're pulling a partial vacuum. You shouldn't be. So real quick to fix this, you need to give the tank some place for air to go. See, these relief valves, a lot of people are I think relief was the way to do it, was to call it relief valves. Fine, I have no problem with that. All this really is a filter. It only allows liquid through. And the relief portion of it is, it does what gas would naturally do. It does what, well, let's put it this way. It does what fluids would naturally do. Go from areas of high pressure to low pressure. That's it. So same example here. Yeah, so check that out. That would be my first thing, but yeah, check your fuel tanks. That's the most likely candidate, I would say. So you notice our pressure started up around 35 atmospheres. Now, I have put a gas relief valve. That tells us that it is not the gas that is pressurized. It is the liquid that is pressurized. The devs made a bunch of changes with the pressurization major update. Some of these were in service of people who have less of a physics and mechanics understanding than others. They, unlike us, the players, they have to be concerned about trying to make the game as approachable to all different levels of understanding. For example, for me, if they wanted to make it one-to-one to real life, it would probably make it easier for me because I have a reasonable understanding of how these things work in real life. For somebody who has no understanding of how these things work in real life, making it a one-to-one would make the game so unapproachable that the player base would be so small that the game could no longer be serviced. And so some of these things are in service. If you just notice there, the pressure went to sub 1 atmosphere, and then it went back up to 1 atmosphere. That is what that simple two-part thing of adding a gas relief valve and a fluid port does. If you noticed in the example before, we went down and we kept getting lower and lower and lower and lower. Eventually, we get fuel starvation. The engine dies because the engine's not getting any fuel because you are trying to crush the container. So the pump in the engine is trying to crush the fluid tank. That is what it's trying to do. And it can't do it. And because it's not strong enough to crush the tank, then the fuel stops going. The fuel, moving the fuel is weaker than crushing the tank. And that's what happens. And by allowing the air to go back in there, I almost got sucked in. That's what happened. If we look, it is pulling in about 7, 8, whatever it's going up to, liters per second of air. It's pulling that into the tank to replace the fuel that it's pulling. Very simple. Basic physics. They told us this. They were going to add this. Here, let's go look at the updates for a little bit here. They told us they were going to add this before the update. A lot of people are new or don't read the updates. I get that. But again, that doesn't mean it's on the devs. I'm not saying this is what Zizo's saying, actively. No, he's not. But some of the players who've had these criticisms about this, it's very much they told us this was coming. They told us wisely this was coming because that's what was going to happen. Was they knew that players who had less understanding of some of the stuff would then blame the game for their misunderstandings of these things. And I get it, but again, it doesn't mean it's their fault that people didn't A, read the updates, B, understand the mechanics. And I think they've done a reasonable job to use some fantasy, some reality to try to come up with a system that really hardcore people with good understanding of engineering can still play the game, and people who have no understanding can still play the game. I'm trying to find the pressurization major here. I think it's this one. Let's read real quick. All right, let's look at this one. Yeah, just leave the site, whatever. All right. Dear Stormworkers, in this post we discuss the upcoming changes to fluid pressure and new support for compressed gases. This update isn't planned to release for months, but we've been working on these mechanics and there is loads to discuss. Alright, they choose their words pretty carefully. Alright, they're coming early and they're warning people of what to expect. Alright. Players have been asking for compressed gases for years. We've recently asked for community feedback regarding if we should rework the mechanic with the condition that this would mean a change to the way the game works, hopefully for a limited effect to existing vehicles. The feedback was overwhelmingly supportive of a rework of compressed gases. This is all cover your ass shit. Hindsight's 2020. At the time, this is what I said. You can go back and watch the weekly update. They're covering their ass on a lot of this shit. They know that there are a bunch of people who, if any change comes, they're going to cry because they just don't want to be bothered. And I get it. And there are a bunch of people who don't want realism. They don't give a shit. There are others like myself who love this shit. This is right up our alley. The existing mechanics don't allow air to be contained in custom tanks or be compressed into smaller containers. What's that telling us? Air will be contained in custom tanks and it'll be compressed into smaller containers. This is what we can do now. This isn't realistic, but the idea is to make the game simpler. Where a container is already full of air, there's no space for fuel unless you allow air to compress, and also allow backflow and add some kind of relief valve. Does this sound familiar to what I just said? Alright. Where a container is already full of air, hint, 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 there is no space for fuel unless you allow air to compress and allow backflow or add some kind of relief valve. Alright. The risk is that, like in real plumbed systems, you can get airlock where trapped air can block flow. Oh my god, as though they saw all these problems coming, that people who don't understand pressure mechanics will get confused. So what did they do? They explained how things work and warned you to get ready. All right. Simply adding special compressed gas air tanks isn't great because it doesn't make sense that air behaves differently in different containers and it doesn't match up with the existing simplified fluid flow and pressure mechanics. So it is better to rework the existing pressure and flow systems to generally allow air compression and for flow and pressure to also consider compression. I 100% agree. You know, their mechanics are pretty simple. It adds a ton of cool stuff to the games. I've done simulated hydraulics with liquids and simulated pneumatics with air. All right, we're developing a new system where pressure is in real-world unit atmospheres. Pressure directly relates to compression. It does. Where gas occupies 1/10 of the volume at 10 atmospheres compared to 1 atmosphere. I explained this when the update first came out. For example, if you have a 1 liter container at 1 atmosphere, guess how much air it has in it? Or it has 1 liter, all right, of air. It's done at standard atmospheres. If you take that 1 liter of air and you put it in a container that is at half a liter of space, it is now at 2 atmospheres. If you take that 1 liter of air and put it into a container that is at 1/4 of a liter in volume, we'll use the correct term, volume, it is at 4 atmospheres. You take that and you divide it in half, volume-wise again, 8 atmospheres. Very simple, linear metric. All right, very simple. This confused the shit out of a ton of people. We could go back and look at comments after comments. It doesn't make any sense. Why does this tank have 5,000 liters of air in it when it's only a 100-liter tank? Because you've compressed it. That's what compression is. So you saw a lot of people that it's fine not to know these things, but they then would blame the game for it. So it's pretty simple. Again, if you half the volume, you double the pressure. Double the volume, half the pressure, right? Very simple stuff here. If you take something that's at 10 atmospheres and you double the volume, you're at 5 atmospheres. Double it again, you're at 2.5 atmospheres. Double it again, you're at 1.25 atmospheres. Okay? Very simple stuff here. By adding compression and directly deriving pressure from this compression, you get a simple system that better reflects real world. Yep. Fluid flows from... this is like listening to one of me talk about this because, again, it's basic stuff. Fluid flows from high pressure to low pressure. The rate of flow is driven by the difference in pressure, delta P. Once pressure equalizes, flow stops. Pretty basic there. We saw it. We saw it in that tank that I just did. As it got down to around 1 atmosphere, right? The area of high pressure was in the tank. And it was at high pressure because the liquid was now pressurized. All right. Once the tank went below 1 atmosphere, we could see the air was then able to flow into the tank and equalize. Once it equalized, the flow stops, right? Very simple, right? It's like when you open a bottle of soda, right? The soda is pressurized. You open the cap, it goes tss. That's the high pressure air going from area of high pressure to low pressure, which is in the room. Once they've equalized, it stops, right? Soda, again, you leave a soda on the counter. You have pressurized carbon dioxide that is trapped in the liquid, right? It's dissolved gas, and eventually that gas at a higher pressure is going to come out of solution. It's going to go into the room, and now the CO2 is in your room, and the soda goes flat. Very basic stuff here. Custom tanks and sealed areas can now contain air, and this air can be compressed and flow. This makes resolving flow through doors much more complex, but has been interesting to develop. The existing mechanics only allow for fluid to overflow from one compartment through a door to the next with compressed gases. Now you can have gas blow out or rush in, while fluid still needs to level out. This is quite complex considering the situation where on one side of the door there's a high water level but low pressure, while on the other side there's highly compressed gas but only a little water. What happens when the door is open moment by moment? So again, it's a tough thing to consider. Is if the air pressure is higher than the pressure of the water will not come into the door. That's how a moon pool works, right? Delta height. Within pipe systems, currently delta height equates to pressure. So I actually haven't seen this. Let's test this. This will be kind of interesting. So what I read from this is delta's change. So the change in height equates to pressure. So for example, if you had a pipe and the pipe is 10 meters tall, you have 10 meters of air sitting in there, and so it would increase the pressure. So I'd be interested to see if that's still in the game. There's a mechanic we plan to remove. Okay, interesting. Because of the complexity introduced. So they reduced complexity to reduce confusion. Again, some people have confused. Again, this is balancing stuff. I have no problem with people complaining about balancing. Whining about it's different. But for example, I would love to have this mechanic. I would love to go test it right now. They said right here it's not in the game. But this is a cool mechanic that would make us be able to do some cool stuff. But again, it's confusing to people who don't understand it. And so, again, they have to make sure that they don't over-confuse people. So, this mechanic we plan to remove because of the complexity introduced and how confusing it can be when playing Stormworks, especially with the introduction of compression. By giving compartments a single pressure value, it's a lot easier to play and understand compared to pressure being different based on the height of the compartment. So, to explain this really simply, let's do a quick one. I'll be out of chat for a second here, as some of these things I need to explain and do drawings. Oh, Jesus Christ, what was that? What was that? 2560 by 1440. 1440. There. All right, let's, I gotta paint this up. So essentially speaking, hold on. I think we're out of fuel here. Yep, we're completely out of jet fuel. So this engine ran until it went out of fuel, Zizo, so I don't see an issue with it. I would check the ventilation on your system. So really simply, what the devs are talking about here is, let's go, 20. So you have a container, okay? Pretty basic physics here. You have a container. All right. Let's go ahead. We'll bucket. We'll go blue for air. So either air or fluid. Fluid is either gas or it's liquid. So trying to make sure I don't use these incorrectly. So a liquid is liquid, a gas is a gas, and a fluid can be either gas or liquid. So for example, you have pretty low pressure at, oh, Jesus Christ, I gotta fix this one. Let's go white on that. All right, good. All right, so let's go, let's fill this. All right, so it's going to be a gradient, but toward the bottom of a container, if I fill the container with air, The white is vacuum. Vacuum is defined as nothing. The blue is air molecules. That's what the bottom of the container looks like. All right. So if you fill this whole container up like this is how it works in game. It's evenly distributed. All the molecules are evenly distributed through the entire column. That is not realistic, but it makes it easier for the average person who may have never had a physics class to understand it. All right, so we'll go from 5% to 10%, and we'll add another one in here. So these molecules weigh something, and they're going to push down, and they're going to tend towards wherever the gravity is the strongest on the planet, so they're going to tend towards the bottom. All right, and so let me move it a little bit here, get particular with it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put a 10% gas gradient, somewhere about here. So again, it would be gradual. Actually, I can probably do a gradual. Let me look. I think I can make a gradient on here. Let's try doing gradient. Linear, reflected, diamond, radial. That's all different bullshit. Ah, shit. How do I do a gradient on this? No. Oh, you bastard. So I could kind of do a gradient in here. Let's try to kind of do a gradient in here. Let's see. Can I do a gradient? Just layer image now. Global. Let me look real quick, see if I can do paint.net bucket gradient. Let's see. All right, let me see if I can do it with a gradient tool. It's going to want to do everything. I don't know why it's doing everything. Let's go like this. Let's try doing it like that. All right, so effectively, this is what it should look like. As you get in there, as you go down, gravity is affecting this, and most of the volume of the matter is going to go down towards gravity. And so this is why, like, people ask, like, oh my God, we have all this air around the Earth. Why doesn't it just escape into space? Because it's being attracted by the gravity of the planet, right? Gas molecules weigh something, and therefore they're attracted by the gravity of Earth. And so it gets real thin out there. We do lose some atmosphere generally because you get like solar winds hitting it and knocking the molecules out. Probably get some photon effect as well. But, so we have a gradient here. And so as you can see, it's getting thinner. This is why when you're flying around, right, at sea level, the air is as dense as it gets. As you go up in altitude, you need more runway because you have fewer molecules to create lift with. And eventually you get up here where there's almost no gas at all, and there's space. All right, so pretty simple. That's what they had in the game, or we're thinking of doing, but this would confuse the shit out of people, some people. And so the test I was going to do is you put a pipe, and the taller the pipe, if it's full of air, it's going to be at a higher pressure. If the reader is at the bottom, because the gas is going to go all down towards the bottom and compress. And create an increased pressure. And so, for example, talking about on Earth here, it's, that's not useful. What the hell am I doing here? Oh, I have to hit escape. All right, let's go to Blick. Let's go to smaller than that. Let's do 15's fine. So generally, let's go 50. Generally speaking, it's 14 point, was it like 69 PSI or 1 ATM or what's kilopascal? Standard kilopascal. How do you not know what kilopascal is? Google. Oh Christ! Never mind. You see standard atmosphere units. Try to get all the different units in here. Yeah, there's pascals right there. Why does it not, like, Doesn't like putting in pascals for some reason in Google. It's the new bullshit. So you have 1,000 millibars. Often we'll use millibars. So 1,000 millibars. You have inches of mercury is another one we use a lot in aviation. 760 inches of M. So these are all the different standard units you would have at sea level. Let's see, and then 14 already to PSI. Bars, like people gave the devs shit for not using bars. It's essentially 1 bar. The difference between atmospheres and bars is pretty much the same. It's negligible. But like these are different units, and as you go up at higher, they're going to be less. So let's see what the standard standard lapse rate for pressure is. So about 1 inch. I'm trying to find it in. It's inches of mercury in aviation, so they're running all inches of mercury. I'd have to then convert it out. I'm going to try to get different units so I don't have to do the conversion each time. So I'll see what the standard lapse rate is in different units. So standard lapse rate for pressure is about 1 inch of mercury for every 1,000 feet. That's why we like to use inches of mercury in aviation, because you're losing 1 inch per 1,000 feet. It's an easy conversion rate. So for example, like if you went up 1,000 feet, you're losing 1 inch of mercury. So you'd be down 759. You go up 10,000, you'd be losing 10 inches of mercury. You'd be at 750. Let's see what the bars are. I'm trying to find this. Let me see. So 1,000 millibars per kilometer. Like that's a pain in the ass to do in aviation. There's a reason why they pick the units they do, is they're easy to work with. Let's see. At low altitudes, above sea level pressure decreased by about 1.2 kilopascals, kPa, 12 hectopascals for every 100 meters. So that's why they choose some of these units in aviation. Is imagine trying to do that math in your head. 1 inch per 1,000 feet is easy. I'm up 10,000 feet. So if you're going to land, and the standard atmosphere is 760, and you're going to land at 5,000 feet, you're taking off 5 inches of mercury. You can expect your altimeter setting to be 755. So that's why they use that in aviation. That's why, like, if they're going to use imperial numbers, why not use 14.69 psi in aviation? Why do they use inches of mercury? Because it's easy. That's why they do it. It's 1 inch, 1 inch per 1,000 feet, and we work in thousands of feet. Some of these, like I said, are in 100 meters. So you now have to take, okay, how many 100 meters am I off? And then I have to do 1.2 kilopascals or 12 hectopascals. It becomes a big pain in the ass. So that's one of the reasons why the standardized units are all different units. Like, that's why we use inches of mercury. So again, inches of mercury is, you take a tube, you put mercury in it, and the tube is a standardized diameter, and it will move an inch, per 1,000 feet. Let me quickly catch up on chat. Hello, Flat Grimace. Hello. Yeah, I've been kind of on this topic, so I'll catch up with chat now. It's a complex topic, so I need to kind of pay attention a little bit. Gas cans also, yes, exactly. Like, but it's a good comment, David. So they're like, especially I remember we had an old gas can when we were kids, and it had the yellow spout on one side, and then you had a little screw cap on the other. And if you tried to pour the fuel into the lawnmower, it would piss gasoline all over the lawnmower because it would glug. If you took off the cap on the back of it, air would freely go in the back of the gas can, and it would not glug. You would get a nice clean stream of gasoline, and likely, maybe, you wouldn't spill gas all over your lawnmower. So very basic systems that are everywhere that, a lot of people just don't know about, which I get. But part of this game I think people need to understand is this is an opportunity to learn some cool stuff and put it in a fun game way. And that's what the devs have stated that they want, is they want things to be interesting. They want people to learn these mechanics. And that's what I think is great with the game. That's why I like doing tutorials. Okay, so yeah, that's probably what it is. But yep, hopefully you figure it out. Hello, CG. Hello, hello. I have a cruise ship to build. Oh, very nice. That's good. Yeah, I saw Neat Not making a cool ferry, which was cool. I like cruise ships seem like a ton of work for me, and it's not something I would actively want to use, so it just doesn't interest me too much, but they're very cool. Oh, they already bitching, yeah. This is the thing too. Is there is a for example, it's an election year in my country, and so of course people are complaining about how bad the crime is. Crime is at record lows. Crime has been going down, but it's an easy hobby horse to get on. So you have a lot of people complaining about crime. The crime level, by all statistics, is going down. But the perception is that crime is going up. And so the perception in the comments section is that the game is in this disastrous state and it's unplayable. It's not the case. It's the fact that the loud voices are going there to voice their discontent, and they put out a false perception that this is what reality is. And it's not the case, you know, and so that's kind of what I see with people complaining about the POTS update is their hobby horse is, if your hobby horse is multiplayer, you go in to bitch about anything that's not multiplayer fixes. Because you don't give because they're selfish. They don't give a shit about other people, and they don't want other people to have their fun. They just want to have their own fun, and that's selfish. I have no problem when they have a multiplayer, an actual hosted multiplayer update. They did this a bunch. They had a bunch of these where they did things that made my gameplay worse in service of the multiplayer community. And I didn't go out and bitch about, oh, I lost, underwater foliage, and I lost floating ice. I lost all these cool things in service of the multiplayer community because I understand that the game's not just for me, and sometimes there's some sacrifices where my gameplay is going to get sacrificed a little bit in service of other players. And because the game's not just for me, it's like, okay, it happens sometimes. And those people do not do the same thing. They just go on and they complain that, oh, this not for me, then this therefore bad. And that is pretty silly. Yeah. So I recommend, hey, if you're interested, if you're happy, if you want POTS to come into the game like I do, put a comment like I did, like Alistair did, that says, hey, looking forward to the POTS. Because imagine if you worked on this for months and months as the developer. You're trying to give a large part of the community what they want. You see, the devs actually go on the bug tracker. They see what the feature requests that people want. And they see, hey, give us POTS, give us POTS, give us fishing, give us fishing. They ran a poll that people said, we want fishing. So they are actively giving the community what they want. But they hopefully stay out of the friggin' comment section on Steam and certainly on Reddit. And so those places attract these people who like to complain. And so it gives us false perception. So the way we as a community can fix it is, if you are enjoying it, go voice your opinion. If you're not enjoying it, go voice your opinion. The problem is, if you're contented, you often don't voice your opinion. And so because you're contented, you don't say, like, I've made this analogy before. You buy a toaster off Amazon. It works. It toasts toast. You don't go back on Amazon and spend your time to write a good review. I put bread in the toaster. It comes out as toast. Yay, I'm happy with this product. This was a good purchase. Generally speaking, you buy the toaster, it toasts. Because you expected it to toast, you don't go back and put a good review. Now, you get a person who got a defective toaster. They put bread in toaster and it comes out as bread. They say, boo, product bad, boo, whoever made the product is terrible. This sucks. Waste of my money. I got a refund. All right. Now, the problem is if you go on there and you see that one review, you think that you're going to get a broken toaster. That's not necessarily the case. The problem was 9 people got perfectly good working toasters, but none of them went and put a review. Yay, turned bread to toast. And if you saw that 9 out of 10 people buy this toaster and it turns bread to toast like you would like it to, then you would buy the friggin' toaster. And if the person who, for example, Amazon with the returns, if they took their defective toaster, returned it, and got a brand new one that works, then they would probably, it's unlikely they go back and they change their review to first one, bread came out bread. Second one, bread came out toast. Would have been nice to get it on the first try, but I'm glad they fixed it. You would then say, okay, this toaster's fine. I'll get this toaster. And if I get a bad toaster, they'll replace it with a good toaster. Yeah, they already told us it was a fishing update. Like, I've still got Flat Grimace saying, I saw they hyped us up for this, but I'm like, they already told us it would be a fishing update. Yep. They already said it would be a fishing update. That's, again, going through here. Most people are not reading these updates, I find. I don't know where I put it, but a lot of people are not reading the updates. They told us it was going to be, and you had people like, oh, I hope the next one sails, and I would put in the comments, they already said it's fishing. And I think it's reasonable to do the 3 fishing. Listen, this is the problem, is it's a confirmation bias problem where when we didn't have fishing, every other week it was, when are we going to get fishing? When are we going to get fishing? When are we going to get fishing? And then we get fishing. The same people who asked for fishing over and over and over and over and over again don't go in and with the same enthusiasm say, thanks for the fishing, I'm enjoying fishing. They just go and play and enjoy fishing. It's the same thing with the toaster. They don't go back and put in a review saying, hey, it made toast. And so it gets this false perception that everybody hates the game, and that's not the case. It's a false perception. I do love some lobsters. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, I'm really excited for this. This will be cool for multiplayer. This will be cool for actually engineering some stuff. Like, I could think of some cool things of, like, for example, where you can't sell your fish, to actively pull the lobster off, put it on a little truck, drive it to where you can sell it, moving fishing pots around, bringing them out there. I'm interested if they're going to have us bait pots. That would be a cool thing to do. Maybe throw a fishing line in, grab a fish, put it in the pot, throw it down. So now while you're waiting for your pots to soak, which soaking is actively sitting out there getting fish, maybe you throw a rod in the water and you get some bait that you can then throw in the pots. That would be super cool. So I did put up a video talking at length about fishing pots. They had used some of my ideas. Not that they weren't, all that innovative or unique. They were just realistic. So we'll see if they put some of those things in. But it'd be very cool to see. They did explicitly say that they have put in many things that people have suggested, showing that, yes, they did listen to some of the voice of the community on what we would like. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting, like CG saying, to see how people engineer their systems. That is what the game is at its heart, is an engineering and building game. And so, I think this gives us more opportunity to build cool cranes. You could see with Alistair's challenge how different people approached cranes and lifting the bus. And it's the same sort of thing, is to show people's innovation and ingenuity and how they're going to set pots. Like, it's not going to surprise me if somebody decides they're going to do a drone that flies a pot out and drops it in the water, and gets another one and flies it out and drops it in the water. Completely impractical, completely not realistic, but perfectly cool. And that's the cool thing, is you can do some cool unrealistic shit with the game as well. Yeah, I think crabbing's going to be super fun. David's asking how many inches of mercury. I said I did get to inches of mercury. But inches of mercury, that's why we use that in aviation. 1 inch per 1,000 feet is the standard rate. Makes a hell of a lot of sense. So say, for example, if you know the standard, we use, what is it, 2.9? So inches of mercury is helpful. Let's see if I can find. I'm not going to do it right now. But, yeah. Unfortunately, our elections take forever. Like, I think Great Britain did their elections in 6 weeks. France did it in, what, 2-3 weeks? Something like that. Our shit takes years. It's gross. Yeah, for example, like Alistair saying, I love floating ice and ocean plants. I did as well. I play mostly single player. I have a good PC, and I had no issues with those things. The problem then becomes it necessarily causes issues with multiplayer, because People have potatoes, you have more people in the area, they spawn big ships, you have big items. All these items require resources, and then the game struggles, and then people again, they're going to say, oh, the experience is bad, which it is. I don't disagree that for a lot of people, the multiplayer experience is bad. But again, some of the attribution is their PC, some of the attribution is their expectations, some of the attribution is their fellow players crashing shit together all the time and causing explosions, which the game then has to render. And they blame the game instead of realizing that they're probably playing it wrong. And I understand, it's a sandbox game, you want to play it the way you want. But, again, just like in real life, you can jump off the top of your house all you want, and you can want to not break your legs. But it doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. Some of it's you got to come down to reality and realize, okay, I would love to be able to jump off my house and just, land soft. But that's not how it works. You have to walk down the staircase, or else you're going to break your legs, Yes. Yeah, like CG is saying, wouldn't surprise me if people build tiny one-pot boats, massive 150-pot boats, or a plane that drops pots from 2,000 feet. Yep. And I think that's super cool. It's like, you can build so much cool stuff. And that's where I think a lot of this whininess is just like, dude, there's no other game like this. You can do so much cool stuff. Like, a lot of people lack the imagination, and, it's that's part of the issue. But again, I think the best part is just like, put in your opinion as well and ignore them if they're overly annoying. Yes, very interesting. Like Flat Grim was saying, I wonder how the pots will work. I'm very excited about that too. I was blown away with the fishing rods. I think they did a great job with that. The fact that it auto-populates the line. If you scroll your mouse wheel, it stows the fishing rod. It instantly gets rid of the line. It gets rid of the floater, the bobber, and the hook. The lure, if you will, and and then you throw it and it will auto distance. Now we can control the depth of it, so we could do, for example, deep sea fishing. Like if you put weights on, you drop it at the bottom for bottom fish. So we can do different depths for fishing. It wouldn't surprise me. We'll see. Tripper was talking about this, how fishing nets are broken. I have literally not played with fishing nets since that happened. It wouldn't surprise me if they made some changes that are coming out in this new update, and so they may have, I have no clue, they may have had to make changes to the nets to make it work with the new system, and instead of them trying to keep 5 different versions of the game working, they said, they're trying to get it ready for the new major update, which is coming in a couple weeks. Would it be reasonable to say, hey guys, we understand the nets aren't working, have patience. Part of this is in service of the next major update. Just take a little break on nets. It will be addressed in the major update. Would that be nice? Yes. But the problem is that's taken as a promise. And if something comes up and they can't stick to that schedule, now they look like assholes for missing the schedule. So I don't necessarily blame them for not putting dates to things too much, because that's, people get all sorts of bent out of shape when you miss a deadline. They really do. Yes, I think it's always best to have it as a toggle, like Alistair is saying, wish they had floating ice and plants as a toggle on-off. Sometimes I think what's happening with this is, I was very much of that opinion and still am, but one interesting thing that Deltars brings up a lot, and by the repetition alone, it seems like it might be an issue, is he talks about the game file size. Now, for example, like ARC is like hundreds of gigabytes to put ARC on my computer, and you say, oh, well, this game has hundreds of gigabytes. Why can't stormworks just be hundreds of gigabytes? But, again, it's working with a different engine, it's working with a different system. Deltars brings up a lot of times how they need to keep the vehicle file sub 10 megabytes. I think it's 10 megabytes. Let me look real quick. Let's take off display cap, we'll look. But they want to keep it, I think, sub 10 megabytes. And he keeps bringing that up. With the repetition alone makes me think that is something important to the game running properly, is to have small vehicle file sizes. Now, part of this could be, for example, if you are recalling the vehicle, you need it to have a, it might take longer to bring in the file. You know, you have some people who keep saying they're stuck at 90%. Could this be that the vehicle file size, you know, they're trying to load 28 vehicles, and it takes a long time to load 28 vehicles? You don't know that. Do they have 20 mods or 20 add-ons installed? Do these people who keep getting stuck at 90%, do they have mods installed? You know, very few of these people say, hey, I have 10 add-ons, I have 20 vehicles spawned, and I have 3 mods installed. These are the mods. They very rarely say that, so you can't tell, you know. Could very well be a game issue, but like I've never had the issue of 90%. You know, my thought is at 90%, I think it loads the vehicles. That makes sense to me. If I have a lot of vehicles in the world, I think it takes a little bit longer. I think it could be a CPU load thing because I've had Tarkov opened. Tarkov will max out my system, and I've had Stormworks opened. I tried to load Stormworks, and it took me 45 seconds to get past 90 while Tarkov was running, likely stressing my system out. So do these people have not good enough of a CPU that it's trying to load all the information on the CPU? Their CPU is not great. It takes a bunch of extra time. You know, so who knows? And that's why it's pretty, like, I think it's almost useless when they say it. So, for example, Triton is 7.8 megabytes. I think, if I recall, Delta has said they're trying to keep all these file sizes under 10 megabytes. So that very well, because he's repeated it so many times, it very well could be an issue of, you know, of the way the system works is if it starts getting too big of a file size, it causes undesirable behavior. The VTOL, for example, is 2 megabytes. So Triton is greater than 3 times the file size of the new VTOL. Triton will give me the warning when it loads up. The VTOL won't. You know, Tethys is 3.89. Tethys is so much more optimized than Triton. It's about half the file size. You know, so that could very well be something that we as player base don't think about, is that the game is not designed to be loading enormous files. And so when you make a Titanic by changing game files to do a huge workbench, and now your file size is at 15 megabytes, and then you blame the game, well, the game's designed to run with sub 10 megabyte files, and now you're at a 15, well, the game's struggling to do it, you know, and you just, what do you want them to do? Rewrite the whole game and give it to you for free? That's not how any of this works, you know. Is it 15 megabytes? Okay, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, so I would love it as well as if they had those things toggleable on and off. I think it's a good idea when possible to do toggle on and off. The thing is, I think a lot of this stuff preloads. Like if you know that some of the worlds you have to make a new save, I'm curious if that's why. Maybe the foliage layer comes in when it builds the world. That very well could happen. For example, in Tarkov, it goes through a loading loot stage. It loads the loot into the map. And so you couldn't say, for example, oh, well, let's actively, at this period, remove a piece of loot from the map because it's preloaded. So depending on how the game is structured, maybe it preloads when you build your save the foliage and the ice. And so then you would have to make a new save to get rid of the ice. So having a toggleable box might not be possible. You could have it if you want to do it before the world, but not, you know. And then the devs have to then keep up with it. If we change a landmass, we have to change all of the foliage. You know, so a bunch of this stuff's very interesting, and I don't know enough about this stuff to speak intelligibly on it. All right, guys, I'm going to take a quick coffee break, and I'll be right back. Let's do that. All right, be right back. Alright, I am returned. Let's fix this. Hello, hello, Sergeant. Good to see you. Am I thinking about getting into some more career? I've been wanting to play career. I kind of got some of those stuff built. I'm kind of getting more busy IRL, so wanting to get into more career. But at some point I'll get back in there. That's one of the reasons I built like some of the new vehicles. I just haven't been feeling it too much. But it would be nice to get back into career, kind of get some of that stuff going. All right, let's see. Hello, hello, James. How are you? Hello, Owl. Well, that's good. Yeah. That's sometimes like, you know, a challenge hits you right and you're just interested. And, you know, like I started like the decorating phase for me. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to decorate anymore. That's why like some of my stuff's under decorated. Is it's just not my favorite thing to do. Is the technical stuff's more interesting in me. So that's like, you know, I already built the crab boat. It probably needs, for Alistair's challenge, it probably needs minimal change for the crabbing, but it'd be kind of neat to go back and see what it needs. Look real quick at, I want to see if there's anybody who needed something for. There's somebody I want to check. They had an issue with their boat. And I would say it's probably one of the issues I, you know, so here, let's look. So these are some of like the helps I've done this week, and it tends to be those two issues I talked about earlier. It's, I would say, you know, sometimes people are not even putting a fluid port into their tanks, but generally people are not ventilating their tanks, and the other one is catalytic converters. So let's see if we can find it. So I hear this a lot. A lot of people are having audio issues. I would say that a lot of this is probably drivers. So many people are having problems where they're not updating their drivers. Like people literally go years without updating their drivers. The drivers is the software required to run the hardware. If you do not have the drivers installed correctly, the developer then has to, like a lot of the updates when the developer updates the game is they're updating it to NVIDIA's latest drivers. And if you don't have NVIDIA's latest drivers, then you have a problem with your game, and they blame the game. Oh, the devs came out with an update, now my game doesn't work. No, no, no. NVIDIA came out with an update. The devs then updated their games to work with that driver. You need to update your drivers so that it now works with the game. It's not the game, you know, the game changed because NVIDIA changed your drivers. You need to update the latest version drivers. And so many people don't do this. Like, there was somebody, again, they said stormworks won't load. I went through the standard list I did. Drivers, all this, and I asked them, did you update your BIOS? They updated their BIOS, and guess what? The game works. So it wasn't stormworks not working, because you can see everybody playing. It's not like everybody's stormworks game stopped playing. It was their game stopped playing. When that happens, it tends to be on you. And so it's something with your system. So you need to fix your system first. Here we go. Help, my engine in my tank loses its power after 1 to 2 minutes. This is generally an easy find. That's generally what it is. And so, let's see. So it worked for this person, but I think, did I get rid of this one? Let's look at it real quick. But it's generally, this is the issue people are having. You know, so like if you look at this tank, it was not hard to figure out what it was. Right there. Here's a tank. Their fuel tank. No ventilation. There's no ventilation. None whatsoever. And here's the pump. So I told them, get rid of the pump, ventilate the tank. That's all you need to do. And that fixes it. You don't need that pump. Again, what it's doing is it is sucking the air out of the tank, and it is putting, well, likely with the small pump, you're not getting to the point where you're getting to 60 atmospheres, because this one can't push to 60 atmospheres. But you are putting a block of air in there, and then it can't go any, it's reducing flow. The best thing to do is, one, you don't need the pump, and you need to ventilate your tanks. The person ventilated their tanks, and guess what? It works. It's not a challenging thing, you know. You just need to ventilate your tanks. Now, if this, I don't know if this body's open, but like say for example, you had a hole in the side. I don't know where that is. Yep, a hole right there, and then you can go like this, and you're done. So generally speaking, that's usually what it is it's very simply people not following the basic mechanics, which I understand. You don't know what you don't know, but that's usually what it is. So at some point, I'll get this video out, which just shows, like, ventilate your tanks. I have made one already, but I'll make another one just showing people. But that's it. Done. That person's build works. They already said that it worked for them. But you see a bunch of that coming up especially. It's usually, that's one of the two things that it's most often, because they usually put a time. And the reason it's working is what I explained before, is the tanks are pre-pressurized. You have 22 atmospheres of diesel pressure. The devs pressurize the liquid to help you out. Because if they didn't, and if the diesel was at 1 atmosphere where it should be, frankly, what would happen is this person would try to crank their engine, they would start pulling a vacuum, and they would never get their engine started, and they would not even be able to play at all. And again, they would blame the game, and they would not be able to play at all, where at least with this, they're able to get a couple minutes and at least do some stuff by having some pre-pressurized liquid. And that's why they did it, and a bunch of people gave them shit for it. They're actively trying to help some of the player base out. Those people need to cool it off, because it's like they're actively balancing something to help people out who don't understand these things. So I think the devs are doing the right thing with that. Personally, again, I would rather if it was one-to-one real life, but a lot of people just struggle with that. This one I did not look at. Let me look at this one. Modular engine seems to run fine with ZE, whatever. Run into a fuel issue after a short ride. Remember, keywords, short ride, or until the tank reaches about 94%. It has nothing to do with 94% tank. It likely has to do when you get to 94%. You're now pulling a vacuum. Throttles down to 0. The engine should idle at 6. It dies, and no restart. Again, because you're likely locked. So let's go take a look at that. I would say likely that is the issue. Starting to see a pattern here, you know, so that's why I'll do this video, but that's the pattern I'm seeing. As I see a lot of this, I am curious, does anyone figure out why sometimes the workshop's not popping up instantly? This one came right up, the other one doesn't. And I'm also curious, is it because some people have their shit on as hidden and they don't know it? Oh yeah, exactly, on CrowdStrike. Does the same go for ballast tanks? Yeah, you get, like, what do you mean? Like, explain more. What do you mean for ballast tanks? I don't know what you mean added load. You're speaking in riddles here a little, James. Let me see. Oh, I see where, okay, I see where you're going before. Let me catch up to Owl's chat. 78 minutes late. That's not too bad. You're good. New player. Okay, I see. I'm catching up, James, to your comments here. New player of the game. I've been having a blast trying to figure out some stuff from the principles. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, reverse engineering some stuff's good. You know, you're kind of at some point dependent upon is that person doing it the correct way, but you do learn a bunch of stuff from that. Engine mystifies me on the construction side. I've got plenty of tutorials there, James. Just go ahead and check out the tutorials. Modular engine tutorials. I tend to go through it part by part. Hello, Sergeant. I said hello to Sergeant, but hello again, and hello on Twitch to Sergeant as well. Load without a load equals way too much wasted heat. Yeah, I'm going over in my cooling series. The next video is going to be on load, showing how I already talked about it in the live stream a couple days ago. So it's kind of a good test, but I went back and I ran all the engines, and I have a little video I saved which has the overheat times for each engine. And then what will happen is I will increase the load on the engines, and we will see the different overheat times there, where some of the engines that didn't overheat will now overheat because I've increased the load. And you can kind of see that, oh, well, that's part of the problem. And again, generally speaking, what you're seeing with people who, oh, it's impossible to cool modular engines, is they don't understand mechanical advantage of gearboxes. They are asking ridiculous things like insane RPSs at huge loads, where for a lot of them, because they don't understand what a gearbox is, why a gearbox is, they are not gearing their engines. So they're running a 5x5 at 60 RPS to turn a huge propeller, where they could run a 1x1, a big 1x1, with a huge propeller geared down, and it would turn the propeller. The thing they want, though, is they want to go 90 knots. Well, you don't have boats that big going 90 knots. You don't. You have a small number of race boats that go 90 knots. So you're asking unrealistic things. That's fine. But if you're going to have a huge boat going a huge speed, you're asking a lot of load generally. And because of that, you need to have a very, 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 very big engine running at a low RPS, because you're asking a huge amount of load. You need a lower RPS, right? I did that graph the other day. And so you need to take advantage of gearing to get there. And a lot of these people don't understand gearing. So they're coming in day one with very limited mechanical knowledge, trying to shoot for the moon. Like, it would be a little bit of a challenge for me to try to go and make a large ship go 90 knots and get the cooling in order. I would put in 5x5s. I would I would gear them up. I would try to get the load reasonable, or get the RPS down to like 3 RPS, gear them way up to try to get the speed I'm looking for. Try to do a bunch of fin work, trying to get as much of the boat out of the water as possible. Try to keep it as light as possible. All these things are things you'd have to do to achieve that. And you got somebody who's just trying to take a lump of boat and go 90 knots. And it's like, you're asking, there's a reason why we don't have oil tankers that go 90 knots in real life. It is goddamn hard to do, and frankly not worth it, and dangerous, And so you try and do it in game, true, but it's going to require that level of engineering to get it working right, Let's see. Cause an engine to fluctuate between high RPS and low RPS. Again, I would just watch the modular engine tutorial. Goes through the series. The most recent ones all work with everything. There's one episode, I think it's episode 3, it talks about how to convert it to run for a boat well. And, you said, James, that you just started playing. You're trying to shoot for the moon. Build something small that works. Once you built something small that works, your first builds are not going to be the builds you use at 1,000 hours. Your first builds are going to get barely any use, and then you're going to start to move on to the next build, and the next build, and the next build. What the hell? How did I spell Marauder? No, it wasn't. It was Leviathan, I think. Yep. So Leviathan was like literally the first boat that I made. And like, I do not, it never got a coat of paint. This was to learn basic stuff in the game. Very, very basic stuff in the game. All right. And then, so if you look at the date, it was February 20, was it? No, February 9th, 2021. Leviathan Mark, this was supposed to be 1.1. That is the next, that's the same day. Mark II, 1.2, so Mark III actually, was the same day. So it's like, it was just moving on, and a lot of your beginning stuff is going to be throwaways. So don't start trying to make some like big elaborate thing. Like, you're not going to make Tethys on day one. Tethys is, if I could spell, like Tethys, it has a lot of complex systems in there. You're not going to build this on day one. I see so many new players try to build a ship this size on day one. Do not do that. Build a small boat that you will happily throw away. Like, if you look at my, like a beginner boat looks like this. That's what a beginner boat should look like. Very basic, very simple. Get it working. Then move on to your next boat. Then move on to your next boat. Move on to your next boat. You know, same thing with planes. Make a small plane. Move on to your next plane. Move on to your next plane. Because you're going to be throwing these things away very quickly as a new player. And that's fine. You're learning these things. And if you spend like 100 hours on a build that is never going to work well because you're new, you're going to get frustrated. Build a small boat that takes you, whatever, 5 hours to build. Then when you end up throwing that away in your first 10 hours, you threw away 5 hours and you learned something. If you're having to try to like throw away 100 hours of work because it doesn't work after 10 hours, you're going to get frustrated because you put in 100 hours to get 10 out. That's not a good rate of return. So you're looking for a good rate of return. Like I put in, 100-something hours into Tethys, but I'm getting hundreds of hours out of Tethys. So it was worth building that build. Some of it, you're building just for fun, too. I wish we could scroll all the way to the bottom or drag this sucker. I see a lot of new players doing this. They shoot for the moon trying to build the biggest, most complex thing. It's the wrong way to do it. It really is. It's a good way to get frustrated because you're not at the level where you can accomplish something like that easily. You want to build something small that works. Go do some rescues. Then build something a little bit bigger, and then you start getting some confidence, and you can start building. I see so many people try to build this monstrosity right out the gate. You're not going to understand the buoyancy well enough in the game. You're not going to understand engine dynamics well enough in game. You don't want to build something super tiny either. Something that will fit in the beginner base. Your beginner base is your first base. Build a boat that will fit in the beginner base that's not overly complex. I took off my mouse clicker here so we can speed it up. I have every build I've ever built in here, so we're almost there. There we go. So yeah, shooting for the moon, it rarely is helpful. So like if you look, I've got Leviathan the Mark 1 up through here. Again, I was on, this is my first day playing the game. I was already doing tests. Testing out different systems in there. Please be at the bottom. Okay. Like here's a rescue boat. Again, I was having buoyancy problems. So what did I do? Make a big square. Floats better. I started going in. I have, this is, again, day 2. I have engine tests. Here's the rib from the game. Like reverse engineering. Tests. My second boat. You can see how many iterations I have of that. Testing things out, learning. Like, that's what you need to be doing in the beginning of the game, is learning. Here's my third boat on the... I've been playing for a week at this point. I'm on my third boat. This boat lasted me a long time. This one I learned a lot of lessons in how to make it work. Here we already have a modular engine test bench going. A remote winch test bench. A tanker. So, this tanker... If we look, I barely did this. I did a hull, didn't work all that well. New tanker, already on to a new tanker. New tanker, already on. This tanker ended up working. I learned some lessons from this. I played with this for 2 days, and then I was on to a new hull. This hull worked a lot better. And then, bingo, this tanker I used a lot. This tanker got me a lot of my early money because it worked a lot better than the other ones. And then you can see, here come iterations. Because it's working, I kept going back and making little improvements. And throughout this process, you learn it. Test rigs. FADEC test rig. Full authority digital engine controller. Diesel electric test rig. Testing these things out. I'm on to my next tanker. I didn't use this one very much. Just playing with ideas. Engine test. Test cube. Ballast rework. This was a new tanker. This one was an improvement off of this one, but I didn't use it very much. Start getting into my first helicopters. This is way overboard for me, and I ended up abandoning this because it was too much. Didn't know enough to work on that. Let's see. JK flip-flop example, just testing stuff a lot. A lot of tests. This helicopter Bumblebee I used for quite a while. This was a good... that worked well. Then I got into this this career tug I used for quite a while. This one was a huge moneymaker for me. But you can see how much testing I did when I started the game was, you know, that's what you're going to have to be doing. This boat, this one had a good long life. Start getting into new helicopter designs, testing. You can see how they're all painted white. That means I never even got them out of the testing phase. They were testing to see how the game works. Modular engine test bench, there's another one. Spot test bench for spotlights. Video switcher test bench. Electric outboard. This one never got out of the test phase. This was a tractor tug for a challenge. Modular engines. This one's coming back because I'm starting to continue to make changes and advancements. This was a new hull design, which was better, but never used it. Here's a new towboat for career. This was a cool helicopter. Just I used it for a little bit and stopped using it. Tank test bench. Bunch of different, you know, these are all configuration changes, learning how to make different helicopters of different designs. This boat never went anywhere. Actually, nope, this one didn't go anywhere. That's a dong. This one's actually pretty funny. I don't want to get demonetized. I like my money. You know, so you can kind of see this iterative process. This was for a Jersey challenge. It didn't get in the video. This one confused the shit out of JSI because it was an actual ASD tug that it was a tractor tug with forward propulsion. You had to really like know how to angle the propellers correctly. This one Tripper took over and used. It's a bunch of different designs for container lifters. So it's like having an iterative process. Don't go building for the moon. That would be my recommendation. We'll keep looking through some chat. Oh, very nice. Oh, that's good. You got your first car, Grimace. That's nice. Yeah, it's not all that challenging, but you start getting into issues where, for example, if I was going to make a large ship that goes 85 knots, it would be pretty easy. Like, say I was going to retrofit Triton to go 85 knots. The engines I know in Triton are too small for that. So I would put a hole in my garage and I would put 5x5s in there. I'd run them low. I'd gear them way the hell up to the sky. I would try to get more of the body out of the water, which means fins that would push the water up out. I don't even need to actively move the fins. I would just need them to add some lift to get it up on plane. Or put it on hydrofoils. Get the boat out of the water because most of the boat is in the water. Decrease the drag, increase the... again, the screw is pretty simple, the propellers. For every one rotation, you go a certain amount forward. So if I want 90 knots, 45 meters per second, I need to turn it at, say, 40 RPS. I now know how much RPS I need to the propeller to go a certain speed. And so I just need to accomplish that with the engine. I need to keep the engine as low of an RPS as possible because the load is going to be very, very, very high. I'm turning a large propeller at a large rate of RPS. That's a lot of load. Need to cut down the RPS. What's that mean? Huge engine. Run many, many loops of cooling. I would do impellers with electric motors running to heat sinks in the hull. And it's done, you know, and that's what I would do. But it's these are all things that, like, you know, after playing for a while. When you haven't played for a while, you really need to start simple, learn some lessons, because, again, like I said, you're going to want to throw your build away. You're going to want to throw away a build and move on to the next one. And so you can't invest 100 hours, play with that build for 3 hours, and then throw it away because you're going to feel very dejected. If you work on a build for 3 hours, use it for 9 hours, you can throw the build away because the invested time was very low compared to the amount you got out of it. And then you put in maybe 10 hours in the next build and use it for 30. And then that starts to become good. That's where a lot of people get they get frustrated because they put so much time in that build and then it doesn't work out. That's where a lot of people make their mistake. Steam, yeah. I think Steam is Tripper's answer to everything. Oh, shit. Yeah, looking at the past challenge is helpful. Like, this is a challenge. This was a New Jersey challenge. This actually won one of the Stormy Awards, this Maz. But, like, you can see the iterative design. I tend to just keep saving. But you can see, here we got design after design on the Maz for the Jersey challenge. See all the iterations of the Maz here for the Jersey challenge. The first Mac Pinnacle was right there. This VTOL was like I look at my how I used to design stuff, and like some of them looked like that looked good. I'd still be happy with that design on it. SkyTim was just cool. It was, this VTOL, of course, is ugly looking, but it did its job. This was for Jersey Challenge. I ended up scrapping this and going with the UFO because I thought it was cooler. See all the iterations of the UFO for the Jersey Challenge. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, you see all the iterations for the Jersey Challenge. Then I started making like this one you can actually fly in because that one was drone. This is a mini one, kind of using the same thing. Kind of fell off with that. Was kind of burned out on that after a while. Got away from it. Bunch of different accessory vehicles, which was kind of cool. Kind of my first container haulers. Yeah. I wanted to make a 4-engine VTOL, never finished it. I finally went back to a 4-engine VTOL with Minky. This was a conversion. I took one of the boats and I converted, I think, this towboat into a water taxi for the mod. I forget, what was it? Stormlink mod. Jet seaplane, I never really got going. Amphib 4 turboprop. This one was actually a pretty good plane. I haven't gone back to it, but this was a jet amphib. Sky Raider was a pretty good build. Used that quite a bit. Bunch of this was all my missile testing for a while there. I know Carnival was using my missiles. This was before the new radars and the new fins, so we were having to make our own microcontrollers, so I did an absolute shitload of testing on those. We have the Fencer, which I used for quite a while. This was the lifeboat for... This was originally what Tethy's... Or, let me see what the dogs are doing. Stand by. I'll be right back. Yeah, so this was pre-Triton, so this was before Triton. And this is like one of the only boats I ever made with 5x5. So it's like I see people putting 5x5s in like the most ridiculous of things. I don't use them for anything. This had 5x5s. This is the only thing I've ever really made with 5x5s. But like this one here, like this is just poor design too. Like the best way to do ships is to put your fuel underneath the floor. It's good for ballast. You can replace it with water, with ballast tanks, and then set the engines up higher. That's what they do IRL too. They usually sew a couple blocks under the floor for all your fuel. So instead, I had 2 massive fuel tanks with a weird walk-through here, and then I was trying to put containers in here. It was just a mess of a design, but it was a cool boat. It goes like 30-something knots because it has 3 5x5s in there, but kind of a mess of a design. It could hold enormous planes on it, which was kind of cool. The frog foot there. lot of missile testing. I did a ton of missile testing. You used to actually have to like make missiles. They're a lot easier now. I haven't made one in a while, but this was for a Jersey challenge. This was a gunboat for the Jersey challenge. This was for a skunk work challenge. The Damon 2111 used that a lot. This helicopter never got much use. This is the first iteration of Triton. This was the first hull build of Triton. And then that got a lot of iteration, of course. This was, this is Hummingbird. Hummingbird was, still is, really good VTOL for Triton. Then Manticore was for, this was the final Jersey challenge I think he held, and I ended up not putting in a build. I needed like a couple more days, and I lost interest at that point, but started the Manticore, and then I redid the shell for that. This was a good fast gift. That's Manticore. Manticore was a pretty good, and then I didn't want to do any more gun nonsense. Didn't want to do any more gun nonsense after that. Rotodyne was for a big man. Was it big man? I think it was big man challenge. I won that one with the Rotodyne. So a lot of iterations of Rotodyne. Let's see, this one was going to be a VTOL fighter. I started losing interest in doing fighters. Started trying to convert the Rotodyne for container modules. Let's see what else. This was kind of cool. This is a Rotodyne firefighting module. Some of the accessory ships for Triton. A lot of Triton work in here. Tried a lot of testing for those. Testing for the crane. There's going to be a lot of Triton iterations here. Started working on container movers so that I can move containers to Triton. That's what I talk about. Like, it's good when you can make a build and that needs like other creations to service it, like, you know, something to move the containers to get to your container ship. This is the beginning here of oh my god, what's the name of it? Vrigeau. So this was the Stormworks Basics when I started that series. The career ship ended up being Vrigeau, so you can see all the iterations of Vrigeau. Start working on this. Was a container mover. It was just very laborious to use that one. Some of the barges I used with that. This was for a big man challenge. I think this one. Yeah, this one big man's challenge. My amphib car. That was a cool challenge because it had like a story of, you know, it's supposed to be a normal guy who works at the lighthouse, and you need to make him a car he can drive from his house, go into the water, and then boat, and then get up on the island. So that was a cool challenge and a good theme for that. Goldfish. Let's see. This is supposed to be a high-speed container ship, just proportionally didn't work, but lots of Triton iterations in there. Blast truck. That's a good naming scheme there. This was a cool little, it's a small beginner base powered barge, and it has azimuth thrusters, so you can move it sideways and everything else. That was actually pretty cool maneuver. Slide axle was a really good trailer. Start work on the Mac. Pinnacle, frameless dump. This was from the Stormworks Basics plane tutorial. Trying to help people out with some of the basics of that. Kind of cool to go through old builds. LL53. Here's TTIS. I gotta finish TTIS Mark II at some point. One of the reasons why my wrecker isn't fully available to everybody on the workshop is I want to finish TTIS Mark II. This is on the workshop, the Mac Art Dump. This is from my Stormworks Basics submarine tutorial, which was quite popular, showing neutral buoyancy. This was, again, history before pressurization. Again, some of the same people who bitch about pressurization now, like, they neglect the benefits of it. Before, with the submarines, you have to pump the water all the way in, pump the water all the way out. So if you could, all you had to do was, and people were always like, when are we going to get pressure so we can do ballast tanks? A lot of these people fundamentally misunderstand pressurization stuff. Like they thought that adding more air into your tanks would make you float higher. No, it's the exact opposite. Air weighs something. A tank with nothing in it will float higher than a tank with air in it. Any air. The more air you put in, the lower it will float. Air weighs something. Air has mass. So anyway, so this was a tutorial showing you that like you can build submarines fine in game, just build them to neutral buoyancy. And so you pre-spawn it at neutral buoyancy. If you want to sink, you bring in a small amount of water and you'll sink. You push that small amount of water out and now you're neutrally buoyant. You push a little bit more out, you'll float. And so that was the tutorial for that. Pintle trailers, let's see. This was career sub I was using. This was funny. Quantum Bullet gave me shit for, Phil gave me shit for, I got this into the weekly update and it had no, it's never been painted. He was all bullshit about that. It was good. So this got into the weekly update looking like this. See if I can find it. That one was funny. He got all bent out of shape with that. It was good. It's like they put a build in the weekly update that has no paint on it. And they was talking about mine. There we find it. Where's the hell are game updates? There it is. There I find the picture. It's pretty funny. Yeah, it's kind of that thing too, is like when people complain about, oh my god, the devs are stealing our builds and they're showing them off and not giving credit. It's like, one, relax. Two, it's like, I've always thought it was great. Like, I love it when my builds get shown in the weekly updates. Like, oh, look, they picked my build. Isn't that cool? And you get a bunch of negative Nancys who, like, they get all bent out of shape. It's like, dude, they're just, like, they're showing some cool builds people are making and recognizing members of the community. There's nothing bad about that. And they just completely, like, piss and moan constantly about it. I gotta go to the official. It was further back. Alright. I don't know if I can search for keyword. I can't think of the keyword. But it's yeah, it's like that weekly gripe people have of, like, you know, of people not, of them not showing who did the build. Is it's ultimately, like, I think a lot of those people don't give a shit about the actual accreditation. It's more that they don't want to do the work to go look for the build, and it's like, you know, and the problem is, like, you know, Alistair has brought it up a couple times. Like, there are people who've taken his builds, changed a couple things, put them back in the workshop. That's bad. And then you see, if somebody ever used your build and somebody else got credit for it, like, that's a screenshot of my build, but Bob got credit for Tim's build. Well, then everybody and their brother is going to bother Bob for the link to the build, which is Tim's build. You know, that's one problem you have. And then the other problem is, stand by, I'm just looking. You know, the other problem is then the devs are going to catch a bunch of shit that, hey, that was my build and you said Tim did that. And it's like, yeah, we just took a picture, like, relax. So instead they just don't credit it because they don't want to get it wrong. And I think it's a reasonable strategy. It's just, you know, you agree to us using your pictures when they, you know, when you post it in that, and then, you know, it's a little shout out to the community, and for some reason people get all bent out of shape about it. That's the largest issue they ever have in life. I think they're doing all right. Try and find the one. See if I find keyword. No, it goes in all text channels. I can't search the actual updates. The keyword. I'm trying to find where mine was in that Phil gave me shit for. It was pretty good. But, like, I've always thought it was cool, like, going through and, oh, good, cool, they picked Citrus's build for the weekly update, they picked mine, and they picked somebody else's that I know, and it's like, oh, cool, and I said, oh, hey, they, you know, like, Tripper got his in the other week, and I was like, hey, you know, that was cool, Tripper, yours was in the weekly update, or York, or, and then you get all these negative people that just, like, whine about it, it's like, they're doing a good thing. They're showing people from the community's work, and you gotta get bent out of shape about that. It's like, you know, go take a walk. What the fuck? Of all the things to complain about, I think that's just silly. So silly. You know, and your screenshot is credited on the vehicle showcase. Go back to the vehicle showcase and you can find whose picture it was. It's you know, the devs aren't saying, "Hey, this is our work." You know, we made this. No, but people like attribute all this nefariousness to it. It's just so silly. I can't find the picture I'm looking for. I cannot find the picture I'm looking for. All right, that's fine. But yeah, I've always liked it when my builds have been in the weekly update. I think it's a good thing that the devs do. I'm just reading chat again. Cockerel's being updated. Cockerel has not been updated in a long time. That was a cool ship. I wanted to do get a 3D print of that. That one had all sorts of center of gravity problems, but it's still all right. But it had some center of gravity problems for a while there, and that's how I learned to like fixing my center of gravity. Was Cockerel help with that? That was I used to do diesel electric in that until I learned drive systems. So I would use a diesel electric system, which was easier to figure out. There's Katydid. There's some. I guess I don't. Do I not have earlier versions of the did? I must not. It's kind of cool to go back through your builds. You can see where you've come from, where you've gone. Like, yeah. The T800, I think, is still my most downloaded one. Here's the Stormworks basic steam piston tutorial, which is my most watched video. You know, going through that, learning the steam stuff. Still a reasonably applicable video. It some stuff has changed, of course. The new steam tutorial series is better, just for more modern works. This was the Cormorant. Like, these are the earlier versions to try to test out some Cormorant. Cormorant actually worked really well. Bearing panel. Start making the bearing panel. Harbor Gen. It's kind of interesting. Like, this is when the hand crank came out. So that was actually quite a while ago. A couple of years ago at this point. You know, and that's something I would recommend to people too, is it's like keep moving on to new builds, because you get some people, they keep updating, which is fine, but the problem is you don't keep learning stuff. So here's a gearing example. I think this was for the gearing tutorial, which was a good video. That one was popular. Start working excavators. Here's a meteor, which was a new, I think, surface to ground. I was going to make a whole missile suite, and then they changed the missile systems, and I kind of fell out of, I stopped being interested in making war nonsense. Remora was a pretty good ship for Triton. Came back to Manticore, tried to finish up Manticore. Yeah, it's one reason why I started doing challenges too, especially with like the Jersey challenges ending. Was the challenge is a good thing to get people thinking outside the box. So I'm glad Alistair's doing them now too, and Flat Gross. It's good some people get some challenges. Plus, it sucked when I had no challenges I could participate in because I was the only one making them. You know, like even if Big Man's challenges like didn't get reviewed because he ran out of time, it was like nice to do them despite the grouchy shitheads that were in his were commenting on his challenges, being dickheads. Very much like one of the important rules in my Discord is you want to be rude to other people's builds. See you later, son. Not interested. Don't have any patience for people ragging on builds, because like you can look at my early builds and they look like crap. And it's like that everybody's builds look like crap when they first start, you know. And the other thing too is I think it's funny too. People will comment on builds like first day builds of like somebody commented on my Wrecker on like day one, and it's like, you think that's what it's going to look like at the end? It's like, it's literally like, everybody builds differently. Like I try to scale and frame, and then I go in and make it look better. Is like, some people start on day one making it look the way it's going to look, and it's not the way I do it. Probably around here is when I started losing interest in making war nonsense. Start doing cap air. Here was all focused on ADF stuff. Cap air. Fortunately, cap air wasn't getting the views, so a lot of work to do those videos and then not get any views. This was a personal transport example for a challenge. It was a rat rod. It was a kind of a thought process for that. Here's a firebug or a dingaling for making forest fires. Still, I don't know if I've ever really got a proper forest fire that was started by the game, because I don't have on disasters. So the problem that I see with fires is the meteors start the fire. I think the fires, they should have some fires spontaneously start. That's the issue, because I don't want meteors on. I don't want goddamn tsunamis, and the meteors will start tsunamis. So I don't want that, and that's kind of the problem, is you have to have those on. You know, and so that's I'm not a huge fan of that. All right, let's see. Catch up with chat, yeah. Yeah, logging industry, a bunch of stuff I think would be cool for industrial stuff. That's where I think, I understand why some people are like, oh, it's a build and rescue game. It's like, that is one thing the game is. If the game was all build and rescue, I would play a hell of a lot less than I do. Because just like most people, you play it until you've exhausted your interest, you get burned out in that thing, and if you have no other thing to go do, you go play another game. And at some point, every one of us will get to the last time we ever touch a game, and then we move on. And so the way you keep people playing your game is, I do some rescues, then I move some containers, then I go mining, then I go do some fishing, and because you have something different you can do, it's less likely you're going to move on. And that's how it has to work. And so, like, for example, if there was logging, I think logging could be real cool. Like, this area down here is pretty dead. And so if you did it down in this area, it's got lots of good trees here, and you add logging where I think you could add some simple things like a chainsaw. You could also add a saw that could be put on some sort of excavator to make a proper forestry system where you essentially, like this tree I can knock over. I can't do it with my body, but you can knock these trees over. And so make it when you put it on there, just kind of like farming sim, where it turns from this tree with foliage that when you cut it down, it now is just a trunk of the tree. They don't have to go super in depth. Doesn't need to be like a forest simulator. It doesn't need to be a farming sim. All they need to do is you cut down the tree, it turns into a trunk, you load it onto a truck, you bring it somewhere, you sell it. I would like them to go one step further from that, where you do forestry stuff, you bring it to somewhere interesting on the map that does not have much of anything. So say that's a train track. Where the hell is a road? Road. Let's say here. Go here, and here is the sawmill, right? So you go to the sawmill. I don't know where the road is. Here's the sawmill. So you bring the logs to the sawmill, and you put them in the sawmill, and if you put in, for every 10 logs you put in the sawmill, you get a pallet of boards. And then the pallet of boards go from here, and they have to go to some sort of construction site. So you have a construction site, or you have a place in town, like a Home Depot, essentially, that takes the processed things and goes there. So you then go, like, this would be kind of interesting to put it up here, because you could then transport it via rail if you liked, giving us multiple methods to move this stuff. And then you go in here, and it has a, so like, you know, this is pretty dead and open, just like they have over here. They have a kind of a faux building right here that's a propellant factory. Put a, I don't know, lumber yard. So you have your sawmill. So you would do, cut the trees wherever the hell you want. Go to the sawmill, turn the trees from, so let's say you get money for the logs, right? You could get money for the logs, so you get like, I don't know, $1 per log. So not a lot of money. But if you convert those logs into pallets of lumber, you then put those on a truck or a train and you take them over here and you deliver them to the lumber yard. You now get 3 times the money for doing the work. So you're being paid for your work essentially. And it gives us a lot of cool stuff to do. That's the sort of stuff that, you'll get that part of the community who boo-hoos anything that's not search and rescue. Again, you can only do so much search and rescue before you get bored of that shit and you want to do something else. And I like search and rescue. But you're going to get bored. And at that point, you can say, well, I'll go try out logging. So you build a logging industry. You build trailers, you build logging machines, you cut some of it by hand, you build logging cars for trains, you load that stuff on truck or trains. You know where it should be? Right friggin' here. That's where it should be. It's a junction between, it's close to the forests. It's at the junction of a train and rail yard and rail. You go ahead, you put in a logging camp or a sawmill. You offload the logs into the sawmill and you get pallets. You then take the pallets, you move them somewhere else, and that gives you a logistics network. So that means you have to build trains and train cars and trucks and trailers to move all this shit. And that's what gives you good in-depth gameplay, because at the end of the day, building machines is the whole point of it. And then having cool machines you can actually use is cool. Because like for a lot of people were building trucks that had no use or had limited use to move fuel from point A to point B. Now the same truck that I built to move fuel can also switch to a different trailer and now move logs. And then, like, you can do the same thing with, in addition to mining, is, you can take the steel and you can convert it into I-beams. And now you have long I-beams that, just like a log, can be loaded onto a trailer. And those I-beams, maybe they have to go from here all the way up to somewhere, like a construction site. You could have, like, I don't know, industrial supplies. And so same thing, you bring your train up here, now you dump your I-beams off and you get the most money for turning the steel into I-beams. Maybe you have to you have to run the furnace. So for example, you could dump the steel into the sell point and get rid of it if you want, or you dump it into the facility. And if you take you have to turn on the furnace, so the furnace needs to run on coal or diesel or whatever, and you have to actually feed the furnace. And when the furnace it will start to slowly convert the steel into I-beams. And then you can take the I-beams and bring them up here to the industrial materials yard, and you sell those I-beams and you make profit. So if you want to spend 5 hours doing this stuff, you might just convert, you might not even make steel, you just make iron. You just run around, do iron, sell it. If you want to spend 20 hours doing it, you might turn it into steel. You want to do 30 hours, you might do it and turn it into I-beams. So that kind of step gameplay really lets you as the player determine. That's why a lot of games do that, Yeah, but logging would be a lot of fun. Same thing with farming. Farming would be great. When do I use the medium? So, when do I go from a 1x1 to a 3x3? The only 3x3s I use are pretty much in insanely large land vehicles like mining trucks. That's it. I use them in trains, and I use them in boats. Anywhere that real life would dictate to have an enormous engine is when I use them. So, trucks are 1x1s for me. Trains are 3x3s. Small boats are 1x1s. Once I get into what I would consider ships, they start getting 3x3s. Like the T-800, which is my large oil tanker, uses 2. Let's bring up the T-800. I might have an old version for Alistair. Alistair talked the difference of like why do I like to use the rocket negative mass over the pivot glitch. Grab a early T800, TA800. Let's see. This one's the release. This one probably has the pivot glitch. Okay, look at all the pivots in this bitch. Here are the pivots in this. So I've got pivots up here. Just take a look at this. That's how many pivots I got in there. Okay. It's symmetrical, so the pivots are the same on one side as the other. This is how many pivots I got going in here. This has like 40-something pivots, I think. Pivots all in here. That's how many pivots I needed to make this thing float. Okay, now watch this behavior. Let's get, I think this one needs to be all the way to the ground. Okay. So this is the T800. Watch it. Watch that. See how it floats and it bobs like nonsense and it gives me a performance warning because of a large number of physics bodies. This is likely going to have physics issues, and it does. All right. So on the engine topic, this has two 3x3s with 2 cylinders. That's it for this ship. This ship will run with 500,000 liters or something ridiculous of oil. And it runs on these two 3x3s. You do not need enormous engines. So that's what this thing does with the pivot glitch, or the pivot glitch, because I would say it's a glitch. You're using pivots in an unintended way to add buoyancy. A pivot's job is not to add buoyancy. The rocket, as far as I'm concerned, is not a glitch. It's just you're changing a value there, putting in a negative mass. You're just subtracting mass, essentially. It is still a glitch. Well, it's an unintended use of it, but it's not a glitch as far as I'm concerned. You're putting in a negative mass, still an unintended thing, but you're not. That's why, for example, the pivots cause that weird bouncing. All right, so this one has the rocket. So if we look, all those pivots are gone. I have lightened the hull with angle blocks. This, I believe, has 4 rockets, 1, 2, and I think I have 2 in the rear, so I can easily control, make sure it sits correctly. I think I don't know where they are. They're back here. 1 is right there, and there's 1 on the other side. So we had like 40-something pivots. This has 4 rockets. Spawn this. So notice it's not. I dropped this one too in the world. Let's see if I can get it to not drop. It did give me a message, but it was different than the other one. Let's not drop it. This one says large number of physics shapes. The other one said subgrids. So notice this one sits about the same in the water column. This one has a lot less weird behavior. Because again, I'm exploiting that. This one is much better here. Let's look at, we're at 62 logic frames at the dock. All right, that's with rocket negative mass. We'll do it the same. I don't need to move. And then this one's with the pivot. See how it's like it's still bouncing like crazy? It's because it has to calculate all these subgrids, and that's what's giving you that extra buoyancy. We're still at 62, but this one has a greater likelihood because it has all those subgrids. You're gonna get weird physics behavior because it's down in the hierarchy down to 62. Now the main body doesn't have any real problem because those are higher on the physics. They're higher on the hierarchy. They get physics first over the other stuff. But like, yeah, so that's, you can see how it's rocking more. That's because of the pivot glitch. You know, the rocket, you don't get that. So that's why I think that's a better system, is to use the rocket on there than the pivots. But yeah, so the question was, when do I start using engines? Like here, to continue on the theme of like the size and the scale of when I go to bigger engines. Like I literally have nothing I run with 5x5s. Nothing. I don't see it. Don't see the need. Because the engine has to be 10 blocks tall, too. So, like, here's Triton. Triton's my biggest ship. It has two 8-cylinder 3x3s in there. They're big. They're proportional where they should be. Trying to put a 5x5 in here. Let's do... You know, so that's the... You know, it's got about the same height. It's not ridiculous, but it's getting tall. You know, and it's... What's the weight on these? That's actually not that bad. 100, 127, 27. So, yeah, it's not a terrible thing to use the 5x5s. They're not, too, you know, incredibly huge, but like some people like. I know the person didn't actually use it in Alistair's challenge, but they said they were using a 5x5. I'm like, oh my god, how are they going to fit a 5x5 in there? And then they end up having a 3x3. But I've never seen any reason to have a 3x3 in a truck. I think why people do it, like a regular truck, I think why people do it is they don't know how to work, make a transmission. And so you have proper transmission, and like I put in my trucks, such as puts in his trucks, you don't need a huge engine. You're using mechanical advantage to give the power, so you don't need it. Yeah, I would not use a pre-made for anything personally at this point. Yeah, like we're back to the point where I was talking about the showcase. Like I was saying, instead of being happy to be showcased, they moan. Exactly, it's a good thing. It's saying, hey, look at this cool thing these people made this week, or put on the thing this week, and then people cry about it. It's like, dude, they're literally just showing off a build of somebody. It's like, why are you crying about that? It's like, oh my god. Yeah. Oh, the steamer you named the cockle. I got you. Yes. Yeah, I've got a ship named the cockle. Oh shit. Sorry. Accidentally pushing buttons. Hopefully I didn't accidentally ban somebody. Yeah, I would have showed me. If you ever accidentally get banned, let me know on Discord because it's unintentional. I just double clicked on something. I was just trying to ban somebody. Ugh. It would have just done it off restream, and I would see you somewhere else and be like, why can't I see the comment over here? And it would confuse the shit out of me. Let's... Yes, the flares do start fires. I don't think Alistair was around at that point, but Citrus loves this one. I made, let's see, let's move bases. I made Dingaling. Dingaling's whole job was to start fires because I did not want to have meteors on. So the whole point was when I was going to do a career episode, I would be able to use Dingaling to start a fire remotely and then go deal with the fire. So where's Firebug? So here's Firebug, also known as Dingaling. It's called Dingaling because it has a bell on it, and when it drops its flares, it dinglings. So let's see. I'm trying to find trees. Where the hell is trees? Go to the trees here real quick. So that's the job of Dingaling. Dingaling's job is just very simply to start fires. If I can remember, 6-4. Oh, fuck. Knew that was going to happen. Fucking knew that was going to happen. You have to do it super fast to get out of the seat before you bash your skull on it. Problem is, it's going to still kill me. It will just, won't kill me. I was going to say it was going to rip the blade off, so I just shut that off. But anyway, so you roll this bad John out there. This was, again, I put this in, and the dev set is working as intended, which kind of sucks. I wish it wasn't working as intended, and they'd fix it, but, So we do altitude hold, station keeping, heading bearing, autopilot, and then Firebug goes off and starts a fire, and then you would then get the message that there's a fire started. So that's the whole job, and it will actually go back to base. So that's what Firebug's job is. I'm gonna go hit the head real quick. You can watch it do it. Alright, I'm back. I got dog sitting, so I'm going to deal with them. Alright, yeah, so Firebug laid the fire, and then should be back here somewhere. Where you at, Firebug? Where'd you go there, sucker? There it is. It lands where it spawned, so it probably hit the roof. But it comes back, it's supposed to land back on the, where it was. But there it is. So that's its job. So the whole point was, like, when I would make episodes of the Career Build series, I wanted to be able to set a fire and then actually go put it out and not have Firebug sitting there like little pyromaniac. But yeah, I would like the devs just to add. I don't, I get it. It's extra work, and it's probably like how many people, but it's like I would like it just to like spontaneously start some fires or stuff like that, and then I think those would be good missions where you got something to do. But like if we look here at the actual logs, like so whatever they're doing with the fire, again, a lot of the games do this where they have different states. So like one of the trees will already catch on fire. So like the fire spread, I'm trying to wait for it to catch on the next tree. But you see it changes the state from the foliage to this. So like you could do multiple stages with the trees for forestry where there's going, this one just lit up. So it's already in the game where it does this, and look, they tip over on their own. So it's like they could easily add this where whatever causes this to tip over, the saw will do that, and then the saw will also change it to the state. And then if you keep sawing it, it will then drop its limbs and become just a trunk. And I think that would be reasonably, like the tech is already in the game, they just have to add to it a little. So stuff like that I think they're receptive to, where it's easier for them to just add something like that. So, but I think that would add some good emergent gameplay there. Let's see. Yep. Yeah, that'd be kind of neat, floating logs. Yeah, I think production chains are really, they add all that depth, and adding the depth gives us a lot of stuff to engineer. It's like, you might want to build forklifts to put certain things on your trucks and everything else like that. Farming would be fantastic. Yeah, so the way I would do farming, like we already have like some static farms, so I would leave them as static farms. I would not, where the hell is it? I'm trying to think. I think it's right here off Holt Town. I would leave it as static farms. I really wouldn't screw around with them. I would take a part of the map, the south right here, generally I would say somewhere around here, because this is a pretty underused area right here. And so if we look at, where is it? Right here. You have kind of this. I would just do it as this and put much bigger, have like a different coloration for the farmland. And then planter would be, it essentially have a foliage layer, and you could do it. I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think we need to make our own custom fields. You don't even do that in Farming Sim. Like have a field, right? A defined field in an area. Have a house workbench, so you can build houses and barns and stuff like that. Even enclosures for cows and other animals. And then you go out with a planter, and as you go over the predefined area, it registers what crop you've put down. They don't even have to make it, for example, where, like in Farming Sim, if you miss a tiny little patch, you miss the patch. I think that's overdoing it. They don't have to get that. Of course, it'd be great if they did, but essentially, like if you cover 90% of the field, it's 90% dense. If you cover 5% of the field while seeding, it's going to be 5% dense. So, let's say the total field capacity could be, 100,000 bushels. If you do 5% of that, right, it's going to be 5,000 bushels. If you do 50%, it's going to be 50,000 bushels. Then you start doing the multipliers on there. So, for example, let's say you plant 100% of the field, so your ideal is at 100,000 bushels. If you do 100% of care, you'll get 100,000 bushels. If you do 50% of care, it's going to drop the yield down to 50,000 bushels. So, for example, water, right? Water is really easy. We already have access to water. You take fresh water, so that would give us a reason to desalinize water. So you take seawater in, you convert it into fresh water, you put it in your sprayer, and you spray the field with water. That that will you have to do it. Like, you could have a simple little page up on there where it says it's at 100% watered, 50% watered. Once it drops below 50% water, you start to lose your how many bushels you're going to get. So instead of 100, you're down to 90,000 bushels at 90% hydration. So you want to keep it at 100% hydration, or you're going to lose the amount of crop. You can fertilize it. You could have it where it says fertilization level is at 0. Well, if you drop down to fertilization level 0, you might go down in bushel count. So you want to get that fertilization up to 100. You want to do herbicide up to 100, pest up to 100. And so you can make it more simple than that, but like, say those couple things would make it pretty simple and easy to do. And so, you don't have to make it super visual like in farming sim where you see weeds and you see this and you see that. Just make it so that it just reads it out. And so you go over the field, and you don't have to be super precise. And I would love to go do crop dusting, where I would build a crop duster, and you fly over the field and you dump water in the field, and you keep it 100% hydration, 100% fertilizer, 100% pesticide and herbicide. And now bingo, you've got by the time it's time to harvest the crop, it's at 100% efficiency, which means you're going to get 100,000 bushels for that field. And then you have a combine block, and all it is a small, let's say, 3x3 block that looks kind of like the head on a combine. You don't have to go overboard where you have a corn head and a Hydroflex head. Just make it, or a real head. Just make it one looking combine. It doesn't have to be farming sim again. And so if you want to do a really narrow combine, I would probably make it bigger. Make it like 5x3. And if you want to do a really narrow one, you've got a 5x3 head on a small one. You have to do a lot of passes. So that's going to burn a lot of diesel, just like in real life. That's why they use huge pieces of equipment to decrease the diesel use. So if you want to make an absolutely enormous combine, you maybe strap 10 of those. Now it's 50 blocks wide by 3. And so you put the combine on there. The combine sections would pass the crop from one another. So in the center, you would then have some connection, and that would go to a combine processor. Just call it whatever you want. And then that would process it, and then that would spit it out as a finished product, which would be the crop, and that would go into a bin. And so all it would do is you'd have combine head would move unfinished crop into the processor, which would then spit it out into a hopper, which would be processed. And that would be your finalized saleable crop. And you could save some of that for seed if you want. If you had extra. So then what would you do? You put it into a silo. So you build a silo using the building bench that's already at the farm, and you build a silo, and it's just a custom container that you then put it in, and you can store it, and then I think they need to go back to variable pricing, so for example, you get middle of winter when there's not a lot of, no food's growing, you might want to wait till winter to sell the crop, so I think that would be kind of cool way to do it. To sell the crop different times. It doesn't have to be based on winter or whatever. Just have it as a rotating cost. Like, wheat is worth, $100 a bushel. Wheat's worth $50 a bushel. So you don't want to do $50 a bushel. You wait for 100 and then you go sell it. Because then you have to take it out of your silo, load it on trucks, drive it, dump it, go back. That's you put it on a barge. That's one thing I think they missed with coal. Was like moving coal on barges. But if you put a coal production place somewhere close to the water, you could then do your mining, load it on a barge. I think that was a big missed opportunity. So having the farms down here, it'd be really cool to bring a barge in and move all your crop with barge. But then you need it so that you can actually have where you process the stuff where you can reach it by there. So like, bring a barge in, put it right here, and now you're dumping all your grain into the into a barge, and find a cool place that has a good intersection of rail, road, and water. So like Holt Town would be a good place probably. Has a good intersection of all of them, I think. Holt's a little bit far off on rail, but like some place where you can pull in and then you like they could. It doesn't need to be Holt Town. It's actually probably better not to be Holt Town. Make it somewhere where it's the intersection of the three, that like right here or something. Put it right here, because this area, like, there's not much use here, so you can drive it in if you want and dump it at the grain mill. Bring it in via barge, dump it at the grain mill. Bring it in via train, dump it at the grain mill. That then gives us the ability to use whatever we want, And then you can also take it from the grain mill and bring it to a grocery store. Well, they could easily put a grocery store type of, it could be anything here. Like, bring it here, you can sell your crops. Bring it to any of your towns, sell the crop as like a pallet. Like, that's why I think they should do palletized stuff. Because, like, you'd have a pallet of bread, a pallet of wheat, and you could sell the crops that way. And I think it would give you that step thing. If you want to just bring it right to the mill, be my guest. But if you want to then load it on and make more money, you can do that. Yeah, that oil tanker needed all those pivots. Yeah, T800 is 3 years old. Yeah, T800, like, because of the buoyancy in game, it still holds about 50% of the oil. But again, I get people's frustration with it not being 1-to-1. I agree. It would be great if it was 1-to-1. The issue being, as well as, like, your expenses are so small in game. Like, a ship that would cost you, like, $200 million costs you 80 grand. And then you get the money back when you put the ship away. So it's not like real life where you have this $200 million ship that costs you $5 million a year to do maintenance on, and $50 million a year in fuel, and you make a 5% profit margin. So you need to run the ship for 20 years straight to be able to recoup the cost. It's cheap in game. You make an exorbitant amount of money. So if I go sell 400,000 liters of oil, like, what am I going to spend all that money on? That's worth 5 times the ship I did in one trip, and there's no maintenance costs. There's fuel costs, but no maintenance costs. So it ends up being, the economics going to be different in game anyway. The old dingling. Yeah, I have that turbo prop to put the fires out. But like, that would be great for multiplayer too. Is like, do some firefighting, like forest fires, start some forest fires, and because, like, for example, you could have somebody running the water to the water bombers. Like, there's the water bombers I was using. You'd have to land them and load them. You can also do, like, seaplane type water bombers where they go get their own water. Stuff like that would be really fun to do as multiplayer. So that could be on the multiplayer list. But again, I'm getting more and more busy as we go here. No, yeah, Dingling never needed safety because Dingling is not meant to be seen. That's why it goes back to base. I'm supposed to be able to launch Dingling, let it start a fire, and disappear out of my life, so that I can then go put out fires. Yep. I see all the comments from when I was feeding the dogs. Hello, King Sheep. Hello. Yes, there's the old saying in agriculture. There's two ways you can go. There's two ways you can go broke. You can either have an old combine in the field all day, or you can have a new combine in the barn. Because like if you had an acre and you have the newest, greatest, hugest, um, combine that does it one pass, it's going to do one pass, and then you're never going to be able to make the payments on it. So you do want to, of course, tune it to the farm size you're doing. So ideally, like if you don't have a lot of farm going, you don't want and a lot of, especially now, I think a lot of the farmers, some of the way they survived was, some of them, they sold the farm and they kept the equipment, and they essentially just go from farm to farm and they get paid to harvest. And then that farmer doesn't have any doesn't have the combines. So they don't have to pay for the combines. They have to pay for the people to come and do it. And then the other farmers, they survived by selling off their expensive equipment that sits in the barn most of the time, and they just hire somebody to do the actual harvesting. Oh, good. Somebody to boot on Twitch. Okay, good. Get rid of them on here, too. Yeah, and that's the thing is, people need to get some of that perspective with the game. Is part of it is that whole thing where you're you make money so easily. Like, you're not making a ton of money transporting a container in real life. The goods are worth a lot of money in there, and each good needs to have a profit. You're not making a ton of money on that. We make an insane amount of profit on transporting the containers. But that's, again, because you don't have 20 years to play the game and recoup your costs. You're just trying to make a little money, and then you want to get to the next bigger and better thing. Hello, Czar. How are you? Isn't it better to play Farming Simulator? No, because it's a different game. Farming Simulator. Okay, let's bring up Farming Simulator here. I have Farming Simulator. That's the thing. I just don't get this argument at all. Nobody's asking for this game to be made to be Farming Simulator. That's not what people are asking. Farming Simulator is about, having the intricacies in the game. So, for example, let's find... Do I have my screenshots? Probably not. So, here, the intricacies of Farming Simulator is that you get to have a bunch of different crops. It looks very, very detailed. Like the beets, the furrows, the different pieces of equipment, the financial structure to advance by buying more and more equipment and different equipment, and making sure you're not overbuying, having a huge mortgage payment and you don't have the fields for it. That is the point of Farming Sim, is to be a very intricate simulator. Over here we have Flight Sim, right? The same argument that I find to be specious would be like, well, what's the point of having planes in stormworks? You could just go get Flight Sim. No, that's not the job. Flight Sim's job is to be a realistic flight simulator where you can do instrument approaches, which I'm actually going to be doing some live streams of Flight Sim soon because I need to brush up on instruments. But every gauge on the plane is accurate. You have to set your altimeter. You have to be able to fly in IMC conditions. You have to know the instrument procedures. You have to do the instrument approach. You have to speak on, comms. That's the point of Flight Sim. It's an incredibly intricate flight simulator. Now, what is Stormworks? Stormworks is a building game where your job is to build machines to accomplish goals. That is the main focus. And because the main focus is that, in Flight Sim, you do not build your own airplanes. In Farming Sim, you do not build your own farming equipment. All right, this game, you build. That's the main purpose of this game, is to build the equipment. That's what it is. The job of the devs is to give us reasons to build equipment. So in Farming Simulator, my job is not to build my tractor and then go through and spend 200 hours iteratively building my tractor. My job is to go to the store in the game and buy a tractor, and the tractor is already pre-built and it works, and it is much more detailed on the farming end. And all I do in Farming Sim pretty much is farm. Now, some people will do mods where you can do mining and whatever, but that's the whole goal of the game. The goal is different here. The goal here is to build and engineer stuff. And so I can engineer a piece of equipment exactly what I want. You know, it would be the same argument of like, well, why have it so you can tow vehicles in stormworks? Why don't you just go get towing simulator? Because that's not the point. The point is I'm going to build a bunch of different vehicles. That's where it's intricate and detailed, is the building is intricate and detailed. The other stuff is less so, right? For example, trains, right? Derail Valley is a much more intricate train simulator than Stormworks. The goal in Derail... Why wouldn't you bring up the picture, you dickhead? The goal in this is I don't build my own train in Derail Valley. They're built for me by the developers, and what's intricate is not the building. What's intricate is the fact that I have to choose my loads, connect my loads. I need to have a source of progression where I can get different contracts and different levels of contracts. And the control scheme is much more detailed on these. It's much more simulator on that end of it. That's where it focuses its stuff. There's no building in this game. This game is a building game. So I just find that I don't understand that argument at all. You could say, well, why build search and rescue stuff when you have this search and rescue game? It's the point of this game is to build. You build an engineer in this game, and then you build some farm equipment, and you don't do as detailed of... I've already went over all this. You don't do as much detailed stuff as you would in Farming Simulator. Farming Simulator is a farming simulator. That's what you do in that. You don't fly planes and do instrument approaches in Farming Simulator. You do that in Flight Simulator. In Stormworks, it's a much more cursory flight simulator. It's a much more cursory ship simulator. It's a much more cursory mining simulator. There are mining games. I've got one. Out of Ore. Out of Ore is a much more intricate mining game. Let's see. I haven't checked the Friday news. But, like, you can see, it has interactive dirt now, where the dirt will be pushed by the bulldozers. I'm trying to find some of them here. You can see much more intricate pre-built mining vehicles here. Let's see. I'm trying to find. They did the new updates where they did the dirt. It used to be like these little lumps. Now it's actual like 3D rendered dirt. You know, so that is the point of this game. You can see 3D rendered dirt. The point of this game is 100% to mine. You don't build the vehicles. So when we do mining in Stormworks, it's much more cursory. The job of us and the point of the game is for me to actually build the craft. That's what it is. Yeah. But yeah, that's the whole point of this game, is to build and engineer the vehicles. And all they need to do is give us a little bit of theme to do that. So that's why when people are like, oh, you know, it's supposed to be a search and rescue game. No, it's building an engineering game. Search and rescue is the first theme. Build some search and rescue stuff. But people are going to get to the end of their... they're going to get bored, frankly, with just building search and rescue. You can only build so many speedboats to go out and do search and rescues before you're like, oh, I've got nothing else to build. And then they add mining. And you say, oh, well, now I'll go build some mining stuff. And you get hyper-focused on that, like I was when we did a bunch of multiplayer mining. Built a ton of mining stuff, and then, you know, kind of got burnt out on mining stuff, and then built some trains, and then you got burned out on trains, and you go build some this, and this, and this. And so as the devs add, for example, fishing, now you go build some fishing boats. That's the point, is to build. It's not a simulator game. That's why the people who just download shit off the workshop, they kind of miss that element of it because they don't build anything, so they want it to be as detailed as a farming sim. That's when you say go play farming sim, because they're not building, and that's the core part of this game. And there is overlap in life. Different games overlap. You know, there's nothing wrong with overlap. You know, and at the end of the day, what adding farming to the game means to me is adding building tractors, building trailers, building semi-trailers for carrying stuff, building the actual farming equipment like plows and seeders and sprayers and all different types of sprayers. I would do crop dusters for sprayers. I would do actual wheeled sprayers. I would do towed sprayers. I would do balers. You know, I would do plows. I would do cultivators. You know, all these things to add to the game. You know, build silos with the building builder. You know, build a farmhouse, build a barn. We already have the ability to transport animals. Does that not sound like something that could easily turn into farming where you build a trailer that can carry animals? So you go find some animals, you bring them back to your farm, you build a fenced-in area with the static vehicle workbench, static structure workbench, sorry. And then you put the cows in the static structure workbench and you get milk, and then you take the milk and you drive it to the town and you sell that, because what do you need then? You need a truck, you need a trailer, you need a tanker to carry the milk, and that's what the point is you to go build those things. That's the building is what this game is about, you know. I don't want to talk about it too much, but I am looking to do some flying. Yeah, flights and moon. I'm not changing the game goals. These are the goals stated by the developer. Like, can you not see what the devs are adding and not think that that's where they're going? You know, people just sticking on to like what their first thing was. They're expanding the game to bring in new players and to continue to feed the old players. That's exactly what they should be doing. Yeah, they're not lazy. You're just that's a lazy sentence to say. You have no clue how much they're working. You really don't. Like, do you see them coding? Do you know these things? Just a throwaway whiny line, frankly. Adding the ability to cut grass and bale it and feed your animals with it and sell it would add a ton of different vehicles. Like, I keep seeing this thing of like, oh, they should just add more search and rescue missions. Like, what? Like, there are some cool ideas I have for adding search and rescue missions. For example, like, Timmy falls down a well. So there's a well somewhere on the map. The well is over here. And there's a well in the middle of the fishing village. Okay, the well is in the middle of the fishing village. And there's a well here. And oh my god, look, Timmy, every once in a while, ends up in the well. So you have to build a little truck, and the truck has a crane, and you go down on a harness, and you grab Timmy, and you go up, and you go back to the hospital. Okay, there are only so many different versions of person needs help. You get yourself to person, you pick up person, you put person in seat, you heal person, you go to hospital. Yay, money. Okay. So when I keep seeing people want more and more search and rescue, there are some cool ideas, but that's generally the formula. Okay, boat on fire. You go out to boat, you grab people, you heal people, you go to hospital, mission done. Okay, great. That's another added mission. All right, boat sinking. Go out to boat, grab people, put people in seat, give health pack, bring to hospital. That mission's done. Oh, person being attacked by bear. Go to bear, shoot bear, grab person, put in seat, heal. Bring to hospital, deliver, mission done, yay, money. Like, you can keep adding these search and rescue missions, which I'm not against, but again, it's this notion I don't get of like how somehow adding things that other people want to do somehow picks your pocket. That's a bunch of bullshit. That's a bunch of bullshit. You know, also, how long are you playing search and rescue? Like, there are new missions that I get all the time that I've never done. I think a lot of people play for a couple days or they don't keep their career game going, and then they say there aren't that many missions. They've been adding search and rescue missions lately. Yes, yeah, I know what you're saying, Sergeant. Yeah, I did play FS13. Yeah, that's the thing is like, once you I played a bunch of farming sim when the pressurization major update came out, and it inspired me to build things in Stormworks, and so kind of the whole thing is, well, why didn't you just keep playing farming sim? Because I wanted to build some things, and so I went to my building game and I built some things, and I got to make some cool tractors that frankly have limited to no use, but it was a cool thing to build in the building game. And when I wanted to go have in-depth farming, I played farming sim. And when I want to have an in-depth flight sim, I play flight sim. But guess what I can't do in flight sim? I can't load a container into my airplane, and I can't make any money. But in this game, I can load a container into this. I can't build any fantasy stuff in flight sim. Guess what I can't do in this game really well? I can't go do an ILS approach. I can't go do slow flight in stalls. I can, but it's not great. The games have different purposes, and this is not a new genre of game that has a building mechanic and you build things that are it's like Minecraft. Why would you farm in Minecraft when you can just go play farming sim? Because it's a different type of game. Like, in Minecraft, you are building a house and you put down some crops because you have to eat, and you have animals, and those animals you can eat, and you can do wool, and you can then build with the wool. So why have farming in Minecraft when you could go play farming sim? Because it's a different type of farming. The farming is leading you to another end. To build pens for it, giving you something to build, pens for your sheep. Like, we used to make cool things in Minecraft, like auto cookers. So you would shoot eggs against the wall, they would hatch, they would go up a staircase full of water, they would go in, it would drown the chickens would then go through fire, it would cook the chickens, they would fall into a funnel and go into a chest, so that you had a ready supply of cooked chicken when you were hungry. And the whole point of it was not to have cooked chicken, it was like 10% of the point. The point was to come up with a cool design of a machine in Minecraft that would automatically cook you chicken. That was the point of the whole operation. And every once in a while, I think it would automatically collect eggs too. It was a very cool, like that period of Minecraft where you can make these really cool, like industry machines. And the point of it was the journey was for you to come up with cool designs, and share them. How do I see the future of the game? They're going to keep adding things for us to build. That's what it is. What people in the community want. Like, they're literally giving people what they wanted. There's a poll, and they're giving them pretty much one by one what people wanted. I would think, they've already noticed people who've done farming videos on talking about farming stuff. Like, let's look at the poll. But again, it's a building game, so they're going to keep adding things for us to build. That's what they're going to do. Let's see. Again, I've talked about this before. You probably didn't see it, but it was like you talk about you have to fill. You have a big circle of how much the game costs to produce, and you need to put enough people in that circle who are paying customers that it fulfills the financial needs of the company. And if you just had this game as a search and rescue game, the game would have gone bankrupt a long time ago. And so they did a poll and they added things. They added nuclear reactors in the game, weapons in the game. A huge portion of the community, I would say, is in the game for weapons and have come to the game for weapons. And they built weapons before we even had them. They would build fake stuff that would just bounce off planes. And they would say, oh, you got hit by it. Pretend you blew up and now you're out of commission. And then they added it. And you say, well, that's not search and rescue. Okay, it isn't. But who cares? Is the core of this game, the best part of this game is building. The sales is probably the next major, I would say, after this one. I think they can do it with nets. I think they'll figure out a system of how to do some sort of propulsion with it, and you'll have sails at some point. I think that is probably the next major update after this next one, which is fishing related. Natural disasters are in. AI ships, planes, and helicopters in. Cooperative building, I don't think is ever coming. I think it would be a rewrite of the game systems. I think the problem is it'd have to be a multiplayer. So what happens when person A is out of sync with person B, and they place a block, and they both place the block on the same spot, and boom. You'd have to completely rewrite the symmetry grid. You know, you can't do symmetry now because what if person B is building where person A is trying to place a block? Two blocks can't be in the same space. I think it's a much more complicated thing, and it would be a huge rewrite to the systems of the game. And I don't think it's, I think that would be better built from the beginning for a new player base, or for a new game, rather. Arctic ice breaking. I doubt that we're going to be able to get the ability to break things and to take one thing that is solid and break it into smaller pieces. It adds a lot of new polygons that the game has to break. You already have a multiplayer community who on a daily basis bitches and reminds the developers that the game is laggy. They've already taken away floating ice. I would guess that floating ice was in service of Arctic ice breaking, and they realized it's going to cause too much lag for the multiplayer community, so we're going to have to take it away from everybody because the multiplayer community will bitch about it. Space is in. Again, people act as though that came out of the blue. Nope, voted for. Steam engines in. Compressed air came with space. That's in. Fishing, we're getting our final one for that. Runway lights in. Decorative components. That would be good, I think. This is more minor updates. I doubt they'll ever do a major where they're like, here are 400 different parts. Delta has already talked about the game file size getting big, and they have to worry about that. So throwing a couple decorative parts here and there as minor updates, I think would be good red meat for the community. FLIR cameras. Stormworks are in. That was voted for, again, from the community. Component modding, I have no clue what that means. No weapons, again, as it is in opposition to that, so that one just gets crossed out. Pathfinding API would be, I would say, the NPCs being able to walk around because we already have AI ships, planes, and helicopters. I don't see the utility in this too much. The NPCs will follow you if you ask them to follow you. It's not the best, but it's not bad. Like, you jump over a rock, they jump over a rock. Can they get confused at times? Yes. But then they stop moving. Like, what do people want? Do they want it when you arrive at the rescue thing, they swim to the bottom and put themselves in a harness? I think that's probably a big rewrite. It's a great opportunity for a NPC to accidentally glitch themselves in the side of your build, and guess what happens? Now your build freaks out and crashes, and it becomes more of a pain in the ass than... Personally, I would much rather, when I arrive at the rescue, they stand there like a bunch of dumbasses, and they do what I tell them to do. I either pick them up and put them in my vehicle, or I call them and have them follow me to my vehicle. I don't want them picking a path on their own, walking into the side of my build, glitching it out, knocking it over, and then now my helicopter has crashed because some NPC has walked in the side of it. Kraken. And then again, more features, no more features, just bug fixes. Again, I showed it on SteamDB. Here, let's bring up SteamDB. This is when players come back to the game, is when, if I can find it, is when we get updates. And so that is just a loss. That's a non-starter at the beginning. All right, we've got major we got DLC, we've got DLC, we've got DLC, and the other peaks tend to be major updates and minor updates. And so it's very well demonstrated that, whenever there's new content added, people come back. So again, here is that weapons DLC that the people who want just search and rescue will say, oh, why are you adding weapons to a search and rescue game? Because it brings a lot of players in. Why are you adding industrial gameplay to the search and rescue game? Because it brings a lot of players in. Why are you adding space to a search and rescue game? Because it brings a lot more players into the game. The numbers show the devs that that's exactly what they should be doing. And I think they should have added a DLC this year. Guess what would happen with a DLC this year? You'd have another big spike right out of October. So. Just reading some more chat. Can you add missions with add-ons? Yes. Yeah, if you go into the... Where's Steam? Find Steam. Let's see. Just do... I'll find some that are reasonable here. Probably find some add-ons in here. I know, like Stormlink. Stormlink's an add-on that adds the ability to transport passengers. There are a bunch of add-ons for missions. I don't know if I can sort by here. I can probably sort by add-on. Where's add-on, add-on, add-on? Missions. Here are a bunch of missions. So you have all these different missions. You can sort by missions and go do those. Environmental mod, let's click on that. We'll add some of those too. So Echo's bigger workbenches. We have better steam, deep sea mining add-on, new default cargo containers, JSI marine industry add-on, Stormlink, which unfortunately I think is dead, which is why I think the devs should add in passenger missions and cargo missions in-game innately. Missions and environments for looks like what's that? International airport. So like if you look here, we've got some, you know, you can have some more detailed airports that are kind of cool, you know. Petroleum industry. Yeah, so adding all these things like stuff like farm and everything else, all it's going to do is like give everybody a ton of stuff to build. You know, like Zizo added this before they came up with their current fishing stuff. You know, and it was as you can see, very popular. 6,500 total subscribers, lots of awards. You know, and so like when people are like, why are we getting more fishing? Because people want it. Very simple. Like, all the devs have to do is go through here and be like, wow, look, this is popular. That's 6,500 people who will be happy if we add more fishing, potentially. You know, because I haven't downloaded this mod, but I've been looking forward to pot fishing for a long time, and now I can get pot fishing coming in a couple weeks. You know? You know, it's like in kind of like the thought process of just stick to search and rescue is like, look at all the things like we've got train stuff that people like, we've got pasture stuff and logistics. We've got all this stuff that bring players into the game, which helps pay for the game that you enjoy. That does other things. So like when somebody puts in something into the game, or the devs put in something in the game that I may not be interested in, but brings in new players, that subsidizes my gameplay. Somebody else paid the devs money so that my gameplay could continue, you know? And so even if it's not something I'm going to use, I'm happy it got added because it means that the game survives and lasts longer. And that benefits me. So even if it doesn't directly benefit me, it secondarily benefits me. But like, look at just all sorts of cool stuff. Like, what's the Santa's Roundup? So discover, sort, deliver. You know, cool stuff on that for different missions. Like, here's an add-on. I was thinking of doing this myself. Like, if you have problems with, or you don't like to, or you'd like to just RP loading your ships with a crane, you can easily put it on each of the docks with your own crane. You know, and that's like, I'm actually actively against the notion of like people that ask for the devs to add a crane at each of the container docks. I'm actively against that because that adds the possibility of it getting lagged out, depreciated, where the devs would have to spend their time fixing the game or working on the game or adding features of the game, working on a crane to fix the crane because they changed something, so they have to go back and work on the crane. I don't want them to do that. I would much rather I build the crane, I put the crane in with an add-on, and then I can fix it or not, and it doesn't. And you know what? I can bring the crane in. Like, here, let's look real quick. And where are we at? We're at sort of south. I'll build a crane. Do I have a crane? I don't know. But anyways, like, here's let's find Sawyer South. I think it's on, yeah, it's on Sawyer Tile. Restore cells. Like, I already have a crane. I just need to fix it so that it can go on here. But, solar cells. How am I missing solar cells? If I see Solar North, I'll go there instead. Doesn't really matter where it is. Well, like this, I think this is much better than having the devs do this stuff. I don't think it's, like, having the devs add, like, cranes and stuff, I think is counterproductive. What they could add is a structure workbench. I would like to see that, where you put the structure workbench in, then you just spawn in your crane, and if it causes you lag because you have that spawned in all the time, you then despawn it. So, like, if I want a crane to load ships, I go like this, save. There, bingo, it's in for free. Didn't cost me anything, because guess what? In real life, you do not pay for them to unload your ship. So that's in. I loaded it on top of these benches. That's why it's sideways. So you could do a static crane right there that's built into the ground, and you could then unload your ship, and then when you're done with it, to save resources, go like this, and bingo, it's gone. You know, so we already have that capability in game. So I would actually, I'm against the devs adding the crane. There's a reason why they took the crane out that was at the career base. Was it's something that has to stay in the world all the time and can potentially, for example, glitch into something. All you need is 2 blocks to get stuck in one another, and you have a huge problem with resources. Let me see if I can find my my lag test. Like, here's my Captain Ore storage facility. We use this a lot with, we're doing mining, or we started to use it with mining, it's at Captain. So the devs could, in theory, make the Captain Ore facility store ore, but the negative with that is everybody, despite whether they ever use mining or not, or are mining currently, have to always have the facility in. Or I could make one myself, and when I want to use it for certain saves, I have myself a huge ore storage facility that stores massive amounts of ore in service of that gameplay. And then guess what? When I'm done with it, it's gone. And that way, it's not troubling the game. You know, so I think that's a better system than having the devs put some of these things in permanently, like vehicles. Because again, I might not like the way the devs built the crane, and the cool thing about this game is I can build it how I want then, you know. Here's FPS Bomb right here. So, like, this is the fear, and this is, like, I talk about this a lot with the multiplayer community. All right, let's look at F1. I'm at 27 frames. Okay, so this is when people say fix multiplayer. Look at how bad this is. All right, this is because I have builds glitched into one another. All right. So all you need on a multiplayer server is a couple jackasses banging shit together really badly, and that caused a problem. One of the problems you always have in multiplayer on those public servers is you got a couple jackasses who one person goes on the workbench and spawns another build in the exact same spot, and it brings the game to its knees. This is what we're working with here. This is the problem. So, you see, I have a couple cars spawned into one another, which happens all the time in multiplayer. Like, we used to do streams with Endo where I would be in the workbench and say, I'm going in the workbench, nobody spawn anything. And somebody would not be paying attention, and they would spawn the vehicle right on top of my vehicle and be like, dude, I'm in the workbench. I said I'm in the workbench. What are you doing? And this is what it would cause, big lag fest. And you see we're down to 34 frames. And it's because we've got this build all breaking apart over here. So this is one of the problems you have in multiplayer with the game is it's a lot of its behavior problems is you get jackasses who don't pay attention, and you're never going to get that in a public server. So when somebody's like, fix multiplayer, like, what do you mean fix multiplayer? Like, this is literally the shit that will go on in a multiplayer server is all you need is 2 people spawning a boat at the same time, and bingo, the server's done. And now you need to wait for those people to despawn the shit. And then you need a couple jerks who are always on Reddit being jerks on purpose to purposefully boot up the game, go into a server, and do it on purpose. And then you make the game that you already hate look bad because you've essentially gone and DDoSed it. All it takes to DDoS this game on a multiplayer server is to spawn a couple ships inside one another. And bingo, the server's done. All right, and then we go like this. And we're back to 62 frames. So it's like that's why like I think it's even a bad idea to have public multiplayer. Just do local multiplayer. Make people host it on their own PC. I think it would be much better for PR for the game to do that. I really do. Yep, you can add additional missions with add-on. Yep. And if you want more cool missions, make them. Or go look on the workshop and add them. They're there. Yep. You have the power to do it. So I'm a green alligator. Yep, more of a John Croc than a John Deere. Yeah, exactly. Like Kevin's saying, Stormworks is a sandbox, not a simulator. And like with any sandbox game, like I use the example of Minecraft, like you can make, you know, you can ride horses in Minecraft, but it's not to the level of Red Dead Redemption 2. You know, you can also, like I said, farm in Minecraft, but it's not going to be to the level of Farming Sim because it's not a farming game. It's a sandbox game. Ark, Survival Evolved. Guess what I can do in Ark Survival Evolved? I can farm. Is it Farming Sim levels? No, of course it isn't, because that's not its job. Its job is to be a sandbox crafting, fighting, PvE, PvP game with dinosaurs and other, you know, creatures. And you can build houses, and you can farm crop plots. But, you know, fertilization considers of either putting dinosaur turds or fertilizer in a crop plot and taking out berries to make stuff. It's not to the level of a farming sim where the job is to, you know, fertilize and manage fertilization states and water and cultivate and rotate and then take those things and transport them from point A to point B and store them waiting for better prices to come up. You know, that's the exclusive purview of farming sim, so you get that depth. Because I don't have a map that's 256 by 256 in farming sim. I have a map that is up to 16x, but it's not as big as this. You know, my job in farming sim is not to fly containers around. That's what this is to have cursory little jobs you can do with the vehicles you build. And they don't need ultra depth. They just need a little bit of depth. That's the whole point of a sandbox. That's cool. Yeah, I was saying some of his friends are using some add-ons where they have a transport company, they buy planes, choose what to load and so far. Yeah, I would like to do some at some point some multiplayer cargo where like we load some aircraft up, fly point A to point B, deliver that cargo, you know, have some jobs for people like running forklifts and tugs to move the stuff. And I would love it if the devs would put that in innately into the game. And if they don't, we can do it on my own as well. How's it going there, Yeet? How are you? Of course the fan base grows. You can see it by the number of people buying the game. You know, I see new players consistently buying the game. You know, they, like I talked about earlier in the stream, is I consistently have new players asking, like they say, hey, I just bought the game, I'm looking to build X. We had somebody in the chat today who just bought the game and was asking for help building stuff. That is literally the player base growing. We got Sergeant pretending to work by putting something on jack stands. That looks like that's got to be a new deer if it's I don't see any paint off of it. What is that, transmission fluid? What are you pulling out of that? Just looking at Sergeant's picture in the Discord. You know, there's new players that join the build challenges all the time. Yeah, got a lot of new players that join the game, and you got people that leave. It's normal attrition. Like some people act like they're supposed to play the game for the rest of their life. It's not how it works. You know, eventually there will be one day where you pick up a game and you never touch again. I used to play the shit out of Rocket League, and then one day just stop playing. You know. Yeah, new players all the time. And again, you know, you can go through Steam and you can see how many people in the discussion asking, I'm new to the game, my engine dies, what is it? We talked about it earlier in the stream of how, like, they're putting their catalytic converters backwards, they're not ventilating their tanks, and you got tons and tons of new players joining, and that's, you know, people buying the game. But like, we just had a sale. I guarantee you that the buy count went up on the sale. Every sale, you get new players buying the game. You know, I joined the game in 2021. There are people who've been here since 2018. You know, and to me, it was, you know, had very limited thought process of Stormworks until I bought it and then was really into it. You know, and you're gonna get people who. There were people who, I know people, you know, left to shit on the space DLC, but there were a lot of people weekly, week after week after week asking for, I hope space is next, because that person's really into space. And you might have somebody who is really into space, but they didn't want to do search and rescue. That doesn't interest them. Mining doesn't interest them. Ships don't interest them, but spaceships interest them. So they built some spaceships. Like Joff Reddy's been building spaceships like crazy lately. Like, you can go through the vehicle showcase. Joff Reddy's been making all sorts of spacecraft over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah, and they're super into it. You've got EOS, who's all into train stuff. You know, that when we got Industrial Frontier and we got a ton more train stuff, and people are like, oh, Industrial Frontier sucks. Sure, it's not for you. But there are a lot of people like myself who love it. Like, I spend most of my time down here. You know, it's got a lot of good rail. It's got really good roads. I love all the mining stuff. There's a lot of mining area. I like, it's my favorite base to start at. It's much better for challenging, building your engines and make sure they can be cooled by running them down in the desert. Like, I would love, like, I think the devs are not inclined to add more landmass because Delta has said that the landmass currently is not fully utilized. Like, there's parts of landmass that currently they don't have much. So I think they're more inclined to expand the use there. Now, I would like to make a video showing them how I think adding some, not huge, but moderate-sized islands, like, for example, they could add, some of these islands I don't like. Like, they're pretty cartoony. They're base islands. They're when they started the game. They're very basic. You know, again, especially when a game first starts, they can't spend, like, 200 hours building a really intricate island. They just put something together. And then as the game gets better, like the airports are better now than some of these old islands. Like, this is a pretty silly island. Like, why would you come out here? Military base, yeah, makes sense to have a strategic place you can go to that's away from everything else. This one here, I think, is ludicrous. Of course, like, you know, I'm very much into aircraft and aeronautical science, so it's like, this drives me nuts that the runway is somewhat, like, you taxi out to the end of the runway like that. That's weird. But, like, you don't need an island much bigger than this. Like, that's a perfect size for having an island in the middle of nowhere. I would love to see an island, like, even this size out here. Because this area is pretty dead. And if you added an island this size out here, like, if you look at it, trying to get it where you can actually see the size of, like, just, like, look at the size of this. If something this big was out here, it would give, and for example, you start to get missions out there, you start to get transport. This is where logistics would be really fun. Like, you get a mission to transport from Endair to here, and people have been asking for a jungle biome for a long time, so I would love to see a jungle biome. And then, let me load up my save here. Got a fishing save somewhere. I think that might be it. Let's see if this is the one. I did it too quickly. But I have one where I have all the fishing nodes bought, and so it gives you a new reason to go out there. So, for example, you have a fishing, like 5 fishing hotspots out near this island. Well, now you fly out to the island, you fish, but there's no place to sell the fish. So what do? You take the fish, put it on a truck, you drive it like 2 minutes over to where the airbase is. You load it onto an airplane. You despawn the truck, you fly the airplane back to FJ, and you sell your fish. That would give people a reason to have airplanes, which currently we don't have, really. I don't have this one. I loaded the wrong save. Where is it? I have one of them where all the... Where the hell is fishing? I had one that I bought all the fish nodes. I might not have. I might have deleted it. Yeah, I don't see it. But I had one where I had all of the fishing nodes bought. Oh, here it is, all fishing spots. It didn't come up when I searched for fish though. So like this gives you good reason to, for example, have an island to go to. You know, that's sometimes what's missed in the game, and I get Deltar's point of like they have a bunch of underutilized area that could be used if they gave it a reason. But I think the better thing is give it a reason. Give us a reason to go out there. You know, and that farming could do that. Like I said, you know, you have that southern part of Sawyer in the southwest that doesn't have any use. You know, make it so that it has some use. Like if you look here, got all these fishing spots, right? So if you put an island this size over here, and it has an airport and a little village and a dock, you now fly from FJ over to here in your airplane. That gives you a reason to have an airplane. You land, you then despawn the airplane at the hangar. You go over to the, you grab a car out of the hangar. You drive over to the dock, which again not a huge island but a small island. Let's say it's jungle themed. You then go and you get your fishing boat out, and now you can go to all these fishing hotspots really conveniently. You fish for a little while, you come back, load it onto a truck, drive it over to the airplane, load it all onto the airplane, put the truck away, boat's already put away, fly off to FJ, deliver the fish, yay, big profit. You know, that would be cool. Having a bunch of those islands moved around. I understand why they did the islands the way they did with seeds, but I find it obnoxious. I would much rather a crafted map than the seed system. So, like, for me personally, like, I want these islands as far away as possible. And so, like, having an island here, now it brings in, gives you a reason to use an airplane to get from point A to point B to then launch a boat. We now have a reason to go out here. People were bitching about how far they had to travel for fish. I think it's a good thing. What's the point of having this whole big map if you guys, I'm talking about those guys. If those guys, like, don't ever want to spend any time traveling anywhere, you know, that would be better than to have a map this big and have no bigger map. Because for them, they can't be bothered to travel more than 5 minutes. They get bored. That's fine. Well, guess what? Nobody is forcing you to fly with a Christ out here. There's a fishing spot here. You can literally fish from here to here all day long. It takes me literally less than 5 minutes to get out here. They could fish like this all day long and never have to leave. Nobody's forcing them to leave. So giving us new reasons to go places. Again, they said, well, the big profitable fish are out here. Well, why do you need to make huge profits? You don't go anywhere. You know, what's the point of making a ton of profit if you never spend it on a huge ship? You know, if you don't like traveling slowly, why do you need $400,000? I need $400,000 because I buy a big ship, and I need that ship because I go from here to the Arctic, or I go from here all the way out to here to fish. So I need a $400,000 ship. So I need to go out to the big, expensive fishing area to get the most profitable fish so that my big fishing ship makes a profit. If I don't want to go long distance, I'll take my tiny little piddly boat that costs $10,000 and I will go out to this fishing ground and I will bring back $20,000 and I paid for my fishing boat. You know? And my new VTOL burns an absolute shitload of fuel. And it only makes sense to have super profitable cargo to go from here all the way up to BVG. And so that tool, the VTOL, it's expensive to run, so I have to run the most expensive cargo, which is from here to here, in order to pay for that, Johnny. And then when I fly up there, there's often no 2 cargo containers for me to come back. So guess what? I will then fly from there to Tajin, land, put it away. I will do some fishing in here, and I will fish for a while, and I'll make some money, and then maybe I'll check on containers. I'll no clip over there, check on the containers. Okay, good. I have 2 containers for FJ. Now I launch my VTOL, fly it over here, land it, load 2 containers, and fly back to FJ. And so that's a way of the game influencing your playstyle by you fly up to the Arctic. There's, you don't have any reason to go back because it's not going to be profitable. So you hang out in the Arctic. You do some missions, you do some fishing, you do a bunch of stuff in the Arctic, and then when that cargo populates and you have a reason to leave, you then leave. You know, you don't need to be a hamster on crack that ping pongs all over the place. Oh, I'll go here to here to here to here to here to here to here. You know, go somewhere, hang out for a while, go back. It gives it a sense of scale. Let's check some chat. Probably finish up here a little bit. Oh, good. Your jet engine's working. Excellent. Yep. Excellent. Yep. All right. Sorry, if you're just going to be whiny, what are you doing? If the game upsets you so much, why are you playing it? Yeah, I don't like using player add-ons because if they don't keep up with it, and that's one of the reasons I'm not a huge mod guy, is I like mods for Kerbal. That's about it. Is if if for example, if NVIDIA changes drivers and it screws up the mod, the game company then changes the game so that it works with the new drivers, and then the mod developer has to go back and they have to change their mod to work with the new drivers, and eventually somebody's like, I'm not getting paid to do this, I'm just making an unpaid mod, or I don't have interest in doing it anymore. They stop updating their mod dies. So I would much rather have it innately in the game where the devs add this feature, NVIDIA changes their drivers, the devs update the base code, which should work with that, added feature, and then bingo, it's fixed. It's like, for example, the screen artifacts is based on AMD drivers. So when you see some people have the weird-looking screens in game, it's because AMD keeps updating the drivers, and those people don't go and update their drivers. And then the devs have to update the code maybe to make it so that the screens work with the new AMD drivers. I did account for the attrition. That's what attrition means. Google, www.google.com attrition. I did directly address that. And there's nothing wrong with leaving. Again, I like tennis. I play tennis. I'm bored of tennis. I move on to basketball. I play basketball. I get bored of basketball. I move on to soccer. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a marriage. You're not trying to get into this game for the rest of your life. You play until you don't like playing anymore. I used to play Tarkov 12 hours a day. I play Tarkov every couple days now. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a normal, natural human thing. That's why there's a term attrition, www.google.com attrition. It's natural. There's a reason why people leave jobs after a while. They love their job. They enjoy it. They get bored of their job. They move on to a different job. It's pretty much human nature. You play a game, you enjoy a game, you get bored of a game, you move on to the next game. For example, I took a nice break from stormworks around October because I was waiting for the devs to iterate, balance, come up with what they wanted to do with pressurization, and when they had it pretty solidified, so we did multiplayer streams of Farming Sim and had a blast. And then I came back and I started building farming vehicles in Stormworks, and we talked about how cool it would be if these farming vehicles could be usable in game. And then I started playing some Out of Ore, and then I came back to so I played Out of Ore for a couple weeks, and then I went and I started doing a ton of mining vehicles in Stormworks, and we did a ton of multiplayer and had a lot of fun. It doesn't mean it was wasted time. If you enjoyed your time, it's not wasted time. And sometimes you get to the point where you don't enjoy something anymore. Rocket League. It was not a waste of my time to play and enjoy Rocket League with friends for years. And then one day, I just didn't pick the game up again. And that's perfectly fine. And there are people who play Rocket League today who joined Rocket League and have been playing in my stead. And that's the natural way of things, is attrition. Very natural. And like Alistair says, it's good when some people leave. If you're not enjoying something, you should leave. And that's part of the problem with this game too, is you got a bunch of whiny people who they don't play anymore, they don't like the game anymore, they stick around and bitch and whine and complain and try to ruin the fun for others instead of moving on. Like Star Citizen used to drive me shithouse. And I used to go on the forums and I used to bitch and just ruin the time of the people who were enjoying the game. and I don't play Star Citizen, haven't picked the game up in over a year, you know, who knows? Maybe I'll never play it again. Maybe I will. But I could sit there and let it ruin my life, and oh my God, I spent like $400 in this game, and oh my God, I can make that money in a day. So I've lost less than a day's wage to go and spend, you know, 6 months of my life whining and complaining about Star Citizen, or I could say, hey, I spent $400. It was not a good use of the money. I didn't get my money's worth out of it. Okay, lesson learned. I'm going to move on, find a game that I like. And I paid less than $50 for this game, and I've got 6,000 hours in it and no end in sight. You know, and maybe someday I'll get bored of this game. And there are times when I get bored. You know, especially when I finish a build and I can't think of what I want to build next. Instead of forcing myself to play and making myself miserable, you know what I do? I go play something else. I play some Ark. I play some Tarkov. Like, Alistair and I have been playing Tarkov. That's been fun. You know, when I needed, like, I got to the end of a build, I didn't know what I wanted to build next. I wasn't focused on anything that I was really needed to build. And so I went and played some Tarkov, and then I started thinking, ooh, I'd like to build a new airplane. And so I started building airplanes and got back into the game. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, people take it as though it's like, it's not supposed to be a job. It's a hobby. It's fun, you know, and if you're not having fun, go do something else. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, like, again, the numbers are public here. We can look at the player count on SteamDB. You know, the game is doing fine. You know, would you like the game to do better? Of course, everybody would. But the game is doing fine. Like, look at the numbers. Game's fine. We got a huge, like, the other thing people aren't accounting, this was all COVID in here. This is the COVID bump. You know, if I could bring up a chart of all games, you would see there was a COVID bump. And naturally, people started going back to work where, for example, like, you have people who would drive 2 hours to work, so they'd have to get up at 5, drive to work, be there at 7, or, you know, whatever. Work for 8 hours, drive 2 hours home. That's 4 hours that that person was not able to do their hobbies. And now this person gets out of their bed, goes play some games, they work, and on lunch, when they used to sit there for an hour and twiddle their thumbs and just be bored, they now play a game, and then they finish their workday, and they don't, instead of driving 2 hours in traffic, they boot up their game and they play their game, and they had this big boot. And then you had all these offices because, you know, you have middle managers who are afraid they're going to get fired because they realize they're useless. And they forced everybody back to work. And so now people are commuting again. So it's a natural thing. The game is fine. Look, you can see the line. It's stable. It's static. You know, we've got 2,483 player peak. We have 2,180 players playing now. You know, we can look at some other games. You know, again, it's a small niche game. Brick Rigs, I would say, is probably on the same type of game. There's Brick Rigs. We have 1,098, 1,535 peak. You know, people probably aren't going over and saying, oh my God, Brick Rigs is dying. No. Look at the time. It's fine. The peak on Brick Rigs was 2,501. The peak on, I go back. Shit. The peak on Stormworks is 6,820. You know, dupe that. What's the other one? What are some other of these buildy games? What the hell is the other one? Something Scrap Mechanic. Gear Blocks, I think, is another one. Scrap Mechanic. On charts. Look at Scrap Mechanic. We got 1,198, 1,815. So these are games that are comparable to Stormworks. So these games are hauling somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2,000 players a day. Around 2,000 players a day, around 2,000 players a day. It's pretty normal. All right, they're nerdy games. That cuts down your gameplay a lot. You know, those are apples to apples comparison of comparable games built around the same time period. You know, this one had a huge 46,000 peak, but look at the difference in that. You know, you look at the average. What is the average for Brick Rigs? This is the average. That's where the average is. You look at the, for Scrap Mechanic, you look at the average for Brick Rigs, you look at somewhere around this line. We put a trend line from here to here. Bingo, that's the average. Looks stable. Stormworks, we build a line from here to here. Stable. It's all within the margin of error and the general oscillations that people are going to have. All right. I'm trying to think what else is a. Are there any other compromise? What is gear blocks? I don't even know. Look at gear blocks. 39 players, 47 24-hour peak. All right, that's what this game looks like. But it had some good peaks here. It looks reasonably stable. You look, this line here is where it's stable. You know, read the chart, it's stable. Now, does it mean it has a lot of players? No. But is it stable? Yeah, it's pretty stable. Now, the problem when you have a very small player base is it doesn't take many players to greatly affect the player count. You know, so if one person stops playing this, 1 divided by 47, that's a 0.02% change. Or what would it be? A tenth of a 2% change. You know, so if you had 5 players stop who didn't play that, it would be 5 divided by 47. That's a 1% change in player count. So if 5 people decided not to pick up gear blocks today, that would be a 1% change in gameplay. So for 2483 times 0.01, no, 0.1, what was it? 2483. 2483 times 0.1. That's if 243, 200. I should have just moved the decimal place. If 248 players today decided not to play Stormworks, that would be a 1% change. So that would be the same as Gearblocks having 5 people decide not to play. That would be the same as if 248 people decided not to play Stormworks today. You know? So yeah, you're losing people, great. But you're also gaining people. You know, again, you can look at it. You look at the owner estimations here. You know, we got 599, 752. Let's say it's 600,000. All right. You have 600,000 people who bought the game. You know, you start looking at, okay, well, let's say you gain 5 today and you lose 5 today. You haven't lost anything. 5 players said, I'm never touching Stormworks again. 5 new players said, hey, I'm playing Stormworks. Some of those players are going to sink a couple ships, get bored, and leave. Some of those players are going to stay for 7,000 hours. You know? I don't think anybody has the data to really draw any conclusions. Who the fuck can draw any conclusions? You know, you had people trying to draw conclusions here, and one, you're not comparing it to general gaming trends, which are affected by the economy. They're affected by situations like COVID, where people had extra gaming time because they couldn't go to the bar, they couldn't go to a football game. And so what did they do? They booted up the computer, they played some games. That's why gaming shot up like a rocket, because people were home, and the only form of entertainment they could do was play some games. So they bought games. And then gaming naturally went down when people started being able to go out and go to restaurants and go to football games and all this other outside extroverted bullshit. Oh, let me look. Sorry to answer my question. Oh, hydraulic fluid, yeah. Yeah, I got hydraulics everywhere. Oh, hello there, Zero Skill Stupid. Hello. Oh, good. I'm glad you found that useful. Yep. Yeah, so like look at the charts. Looks fine. You know, would it be better if it was like, you know, I'll show you. We'll look at some bad charts. All right. This is a chart that actually Battlefield 2042 is not too bad now, but it's been on discount Well, like you can see, this is a big oscillatory type of game. This is a game where people play for a couple months and then never touch again. This one's going to have huge player bases, but huge fall off. And this game's rated like shit. It's 44% positive. All right, you got 7,000 players in the game right now, made by a huge AAA studio. It's got, let's say, 7 times generously the player count of stormworks. The amount of money they probably put into this game is extremely high compared to the current player count, but they had 8 million people buy the game. Now, theoretically, the high number, so that's, let's say, look at the middle number here is 6 million. So that's, say, probably 10 times the copies that stormworks has been bought. And this is by EA. You look, these are aberrations in the chart. Somewhere in here is probably the average player base is somewhere right in there. Average isn't really a good number either. Median is probably better. So median player base is probably more here on Battlefield 2042. That was a very poorly received game by a AAA studio that cost them a ton of money to make. Sold a pretty good number of copies. Rated poorly. I keep saying you'll get people come in with, let's see, what is it? You'll see some Carrier Command 2 people come into the Stormworks forums complaining about their game not getting updates. Well, look at the player count. It had a huge, people played it right off the bat. I've never touched it. I've saw some videos of Carrier Command. It was very much let's go try this game. Play it for, it's like one of those games you play for 20 hours and you never pick up again. It doesn't have high replayability, and that's fine. There are some games, or for example, there was a game where after you played the story, it shuts off and you can never play it again. You play the story once, it's about a 20-hour story, you enjoy the story, and then you're done. There are a lot of games like that, and there's nothing wrong with them. You don't need a game that necessarily you play 5,000 hours of. But that game had a 3,000 player base, so the peak of Carrier Command 2 is just around today's peak. But Carrier Command 2, at its height, had as many players as Stormworks has on a daily basis, and then it heavily fell off. They only have 92 players playing a day, and people ask for updates. That's why they don't do big updates for Carrier Command 2, is you have the same 4 to 8 people. I think they did expand the team. 4 to 8 people working at the company. Which game are you going to work on? You're going to work on this one that has 2,483 people playing a day, or you're going to work on this one that has 92. I think economics tells you pretty simply that you leave this one alone as much as you can. You put this one on stasis, and you work on this one. And if this game dipped down to numbers like that, you would expect the devs to put this one on stasis and let that one ride. And that's why they are making another game in parallel. Is if something happened in this game, they would want something going. It's pretty normal. It's why, Black & Decker doesn't make a toaster the last 400 years. Is because they need somebody to, I'd like a new toaster. Well, my aesthetic now is stainless steel. Well, I'm going to brushed aluminum now. I'm getting a brushed aluminum stove, so I don't want a stainless steel toaster. So they throw their toaster away and they get a new toaster. So Black & Decker, sells that same person another toaster. Pretty basic economics. Yeah, Citrus says, Stormworks, he's paid 0.013 euros per hour. Let's see where I'm at on that. I'm at 68.50. Let's say I paid $50. So 0.007 cents per, no, that would be dollars. $0.007 per hour. So a hundredth, what was it? So that would be about 1/10 of 7 cents. So pretty damn cheap. You know, there are whiny people in the community who, yeah, they played 50 hours. So what do they pay? You know, they probably didn't buy the DLCs, but still at that, let's say worst case they paid 50 cents an hour. Like, compare that to going to the movies. All right, I went to a movie last weekend. It was, well, I don't know, whatever, 15 bucks. It was okay. You know, that was, let's say it was generously 2 hours, 2 hour movie. That's $7.50 an hour. You know, do I regret it? No. Do I cry out? No. Paid $7.50 an hour. Hung out with some friends. Enjoyed the movie. Wasn't the best movie I've ever seen. I've had movies I've watched that I own at TV that cost me nothing, essentially. You know, Twisters. Yeah, I was doing full DLCs, everything. I did my whole expenditure. Like, for example, Ark. I'm glad I bought Ark. Bought Ark for 28 bucks on sale. Got 152 hours in it. 28 divided by 152. I paid 18 cents an hour. So, quite a bit more than I paid in Stormworks, but I don't have a problem with this. I have not got my money's worth out of this yet. I think I paid 40-something bucks for this, say 45. So 5.3 divided by $45. No, I did that backwards. Let's see. 45 divided by 5.3. $8.49 an hour I paid for Flight Sim. I have not got my money's out of this. Star Citizen, I don't know what I have in Star Citizen, but I've not anywhere got my money's worth out of Star Citizen. Yeah. All right, guys, I think we'll finish it up there. It was fun, kind of a little bit different. I'm gonna be getting more busy. I'm gonna do some Flight Sim streams at some point. I gotta get everything set up for that. Hopefully we'll see how much of the cockpits are VR cockpits. That would help. If I do VR cockpits, that's helpful. Streaming VR is a pain in the ass, but I really do like the being able to use the joysticks for the everything. But I have to be able to do instrument approaches and everything else. So play with that. I tried doing the Cessna 152. I'd like to do something in autopilot because I'm trying to focus on just doing the approaches and not having to dick around with, you know, flying. I could fly fine. I just need to run instrument approaches one after the other. So thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, make sure you like the video. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. And I will see you guys next one. Bye.